Chapter 1668. The speed of light was incredible and beyond people's cognition. It was not an exaggeration to describe it as fleeting. When moving forward, there would be a huge roar, and the vibration made people's eardrums hurt. Who is it? With such a huge movement, Tatsumi also noticed it at the first time. As soon as he turned around, a slap flew over. Bang bang bang. Kakaka. Tatsumi's head was hit a few times by an extremely violent fist, and he could still hear the sound of kakaka. His nose and teeth were broken by the owner of this light. Ouch, it hurts. Tatsumi's eyes were filled with tears due to the pain. He covered his old face with both hands and rolled on the ground in pain. Who did it? Who is it? A voice full of hatred jumped out from Tatsumi's throat. He finally escaped from the wolf's den of the night raid. He thought that he would have no worries after joining the revolutionary army. Who knew that God didn't give him face? He didn't escape far before an unexpected disaster came. Tatsumi, you heartless thing, you want to run away after taking the things of the night raid? At least take off, haunted spirit, and give it to me. The light turned into reality and condensed into a handsome face. The person who came had a jade-like face. His gentle face was as warm as the sun, and his smile made people involuntarily open their hearts. Only the cold eyes were as terrifying as the devil. It was not difficult to see that this person was like a smiling tiger. He was temperamental and no one could figure out what he was thinking. Dustless. Tatsumi was furious when he saw it. His eyes were filled with hatred when he met his enemy. Before escaping the detection range of the night raid, Tatsumi unlocked the haunted spirit armor. Now because of the appearance of Dustless, Tatsumi once again used his trump card. Due to the deep resentment between the two, haunted spirit felt the anger in Tatsumi's soul and mutated. The dazzling light spread out. At the waist, a pair of broken wings flashed. They were full of incomplete traces like broken scrap iron. But even so, Tatsumi's momentum was several times stronger than before. Kakaka. The ground beneath his feet also began to crack chaotically. Yo! Seeing this, Dustless showed a rare expression of appreciation and complimented, "Your willpower is not bad. Ghost Haunt has sensed your anger and evolved. Do you hate me so much, Tatsumi? Do I need you to tell me whether I hate you or not? I didn't mean to go against you, but you always make things difficult for me and suppress me. Today it's time to end the grudge." Clenching his fist, Tatsumi's confidence soared. Dustless smiled and said disdainfully, "Do you think you've improved just because you've grown trash wings? Big mistake. Rotten oranges will always be rotten oranges." Swish, swish. Just as he finished speaking, Dustless's figure flashed and pounced over with a strong pressure. Still so fast. Tatsumi caught the afterimage coming toward him and looked cautious. Then, he carefully observed for a while and said in a relaxed tone, "But this time, I can see your figure clearly." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Tatsumi also rushed out without fear. With a fearless expression, he rushed toward Dustless. His huge fist was clenched into a fist and he punched with all his strength. Bang bang bang. In the air, a white shock wave broke out and lifted everything around. The ground under their feet collapsed and turned into a big pit in an instant. It hurts. The two fought with pure strength. Tatsumi's face was pale and he tried to hide his twitching arm because of the pain. As small as a grain of sand. Tatsumi concealed it quite cleverly. Dustless could still hear his rapid breathing several times faster. No matter how heavy the sand is, when the storm comes, he can only let it go. The other hand suddenly picked up and aimed at Tatsumi's eyebrows. A very destructive light condensed in an instant. He flicked his finger, laser. So fast. Tatsumi's pupils suddenly shrank. When the light flashed, he felt that something was wrong and he moved to the left. Gotcha. Although Tatsumi's speed could be called lightning, he was still a little inferior to Dustless. The armor on his face collapsed in an instant and turned into 4 or 5 fragments. I just lost? Tatsumi was still in shock and subconsciously touched his cheek. Although the penetrating light did not penetrate his head, it made Tatsumi feel the fear of a brush with death. That feeling of almost stepping into the netherworld with a single step was truly oppressive. God did not abandon me. Scratching his palm, Tatsumi, who felt the stinging pain, exhaled heavily. Just as he was about to prepare for the battle, a ray of golden light rushed forward. Puchi. There was no time to dodge. Tatsumi's whole body was penetrated by the light, leaving a scorched scar on his chest. Sorry Tatsumi, I really hate you. Maybe you will know why I am targeting you. In fact, there is no special reason. It's just an instinct for hunters to kill beasts when they encounter them. That's all. You? Boss Najenda can't order you to kill me. You are taking revenge. Tatsumi vomited blood and roared at Dustless. His mouth was full of blood traces. He was like a vampire. Tatsumi, listened to me clearly. In my dictionary of life there is no such thing as order. I follow Nagenda's order just to pass the time. If she makes me feel bored one day, I can still kill the night raid. No one in this world can give me orders. After the voice fell, Dustless rotated the heaven cluster cloud sword condensed by the glint fruit a few times. Tatsumi's internal organs were instantly crushed. Chapter 1669. Puchi. The severe tingling spread all over his body. Tatsumi's face was as pale as paper, and he was sweating like rain. He felt that his vitality was fading rapidly, and a sense of powerlessness deep in his soul swept everywhere in an instant. His eyes even saw the grim reaper who came to kill him with a sickle. In this short period of time, even Tatsumi's black hair turned white a lot. You killed your companion, the boss will definitely not let you go. Tatsumi shouted with a face full of hatred. Soon we will meet in hell and fight again in the next life. Tut tut, your hope is doomed to fail. Dustless raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. Kill your companion? To tell you the truth, your good brother Bullet was killed by me. But what is the result? I still live happily until now, but you, tut tut, your appearance is really miserable. Seeing Tatsumi was so stubborn, Dustless stabbed Tatsumi's heart with the heaven cluster cloud sword and penetrated deeper. Puchi. The burnt wound was full of burning smell. Tatsumi's flesh was burnt, making a disgusting smell. Bah, this smell is disgusting. How many days have you not taken a bath? Dustless looked disgusted and kicked Tatsumi out. You damn guy, I will not forgive you even if I become a ghost. Tatsumi looked at Dustless with hatred. His scarlet eyes remembered Dustless in his mind, and then he was unwilling to die. Idiot, there are many people who hate me. Who do you think you are? Glancing at Tatsumi's body faintly, Dustless's pupils flashed a sharp light. Amaterasu. Tatsumi's whole body burned with black flames. His body was slowly swallowed and gradually disappeared. Even Dustless did not let go of his taigu haunted by evil spirits. He destroyed all of it and burned it into black residue. You are really ruthless, you deserve to be. Istetha's delicate body flashed to Dustless's side. She looked at Tatsumi's disappearing body coldly. Only this black flame made her feel the fatal threat. How many trump cards does this man have that I don't know about? Her bright eyes were even more lonely. Isteth felt powerless for a deep-sea shark like Dustless, and at the same time she became more firm with Dustless's plan to make a human being. I'll borrow your seed to destroy you. Isteth felt that this plan was quite good. At least it was the only strategy she could think of to deal with Dustless. Go back and say that this guy was killed by the Revolutionary Army, and the taiga was also taken away. Dustless took back his sight. He finally left Istetha's back. What if I expose your plot to kill Tatsumi? Staring at Dustless's cold face, Isteth pointed to her chin and teased, if that's the case, you will be betrayed by everyone. Extremely bored, Dustless glanced at Isteth. He said with a resolute tone, if you want to report me, you will not gossip here. Moreover, compared with each other, Najenda believes me more. I can totally bite back and say that you plot to frame me and seduce me to sleep with you. You're really shameless. Isteth was stunned, looking at Dustless, who was not blushing and breathless. This guy looked like the kind of person who was used to lying. He was so calm. It's time to end it. Immediately destroy this decaying transition, and then take you to see a new world. In the ruins of the night raid in the temporary room. Is Tatsumi dead? It's a pity that he has worked for us for so long. Hearing the news of Tatsumi's death, Nagenda's face was full of regret, but she was not sad. Yes, he wanted to join the Revolutionary Army and I caught him. In the end, he couldn't stand my torture. He told us all his plan to frame us, and his body was eaten by the dangerous species. Dustless said seriously and carefully. It was very bewitching. It was obviously made up, but everyone had a kind of immersive experience, witnessing the scene of Tatsumi's betrayal in the night raid. Humph, a traitor is just a traitor. His death is not regrettable. Mine curled her lips disdainfully. Her mouth was full of disgust and disgust. I was blind. Leonie also had a black face. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She wanted to skin Tatsumi alive. If Tatsumi was in front of her at this moment, she might whip his body. I didn't expect him to be a traitor. I really should kill him myself. Akame's taigu was pulled out of the scabbard. I didn't know that the guy Tatsumi was a traitor. We were all careless. Chelsea had a lollipop in her mouth, and the cold light flashed in her eyes. For traitors, no matter who they were, they had no good feelings. Forget it, Tatsumi's matter is over. The next step of the plan is to destroy the Empire. We will arrange the plan ourselves. In the future, the Night Raid and the Revolutionary Army will be the enemy. When saying this, the boss Nagenda's tone was full of confidence. Although there were only a few people in the Night Raid, the soldiers of the Night Raid or the Empire were not as powerful as the members of the Night Raid. With our strength, we can completely kill the Empire's army, and then annihilate the Revolutionary Army. No force can stop the advance of the Night Raid. Speaking of this, Dustless's tone suddenly stopped. The Empire and the Revolutionary Army were finished, and a new ruler must be needed to control the Empire. There was no doubt that Dustless was the most suitable person. After all, the person with the bigger fist had the final say, but he was not interested in being the emperor. He still released Infinite Tsukuyami to continue to destroy the world. Chapter 1670. At this moment, the imperial capital was getting dark. It was the opposite of the unprecedentedly prosperous city in the past. The Revolutionary Army set fire everywhere. The empire had already been crumbling and could collapse at any time. The only comfort was that the members of the Revolutionary Army and the Night Raid were not in a hurry to attack and collapse the imperial capital. This also made everyone a little more comforted. At least, Minister Ernest was extremely happy. Gulp. Inside the palace, the luxury was not reduced. Minister Ernest still had dinner with the emperor as usual. Especially Minister Ernest, the speed of eating meat was more exaggerated than before. He was afraid that he would not be able to eat meat when he went to hell. Your Majesty, you don't have to worry. It's only a matter of time before those who dare to provoke the Empire are suppressed by your power. The strongest Taigu, Supreme Taser, is the ultimate existence of God. People as strong as Generalist Death were defeated by you in the end. Minister Onesta sucked up to the king while he hurriedly swept through the dazzling array of food on the table. I hope so. This time the little emperor frowned. He was not as easy to fool as before. He was scared and said, but now except for the imperial capital, we have lost the other territories of the empire. Sooner or later, I will become the sinner of the empire's destruction. Ah! Minister Ernest was stunned when he heard the words. He did not expect that this stupid emperor would say such a thing. He could only continue to fool him. Your Majesty, you don't have to care about those unruly people. As long as you control Supreme Taser, you can crush everything just like how you suppressed the traitor Generalist Death. Defeat all the enemies. Defeat all the enemies? Boom boom boom. The sound of dead silence fell, then a black shadow fell from the sky. The interior of the luxurious palace suddenly trembled, and there were cracks around the walls. Do you want to die by breaking into the palace? Come on, kill this guy for me. Minister Onesta, who was frightened, roared. The moment the tremor appeared, he hurriedly crawled under the table, losing all his face. Damn it. Minister Ernest looked at him angrily. After seeing the person who came, he immediately cried, Your Majesty, this evil man named Dustless in front of you is the culprit of the collapse of the empire. You, the young emperor stared at Dustless with an ignorant look. Obviously, he had been deceived and manipulated by Minister Onesta. No, to the young emperor, Minister Onesta was his father. The guards of such a huge palace have all been annihilated. If you have any skills, take them out. I'll give you a chance to bloom, then you can atone for your sins with your deaths. You want me to atone for my crimes with my death? When the emperor heard the arrogant and disrespectful tone, he flew into a rage. A special energy fluctuation appeared on his body, and the room started to tremble and collapse at an accelerated rate. Bang! With a loud bang, the palace turned into ruins. The dark and oppressive room was lit up quite a bit. Looking up, it turned out that a gentle light was descending from the sky. Ayo ayo ayo. After a few dozen seconds, the bright sky darkened once again. A black shadow that was dozens of meters tall turned from nothingness to reality, and its mighty and extraordinary figure was exposed to the world. What the hell is that? A group of members of the Night Raid who raided the palace looked up at the sky, looking at the unparalleled height and the domineering temperament, their scalps were numb. I heard from Dustless that this is the strongest Taigu, Supreme Taser. I didn't expect it to have such a powerful power. With such a terrifying height, not to mention that it is a Taigu, even if it is a worm, it can turn the world upside down when it moves. I came and others were horrified. Even if Dustless had given them a precaution before, they were still shocked by the thunder at this moment. The oppression brought by this super monster was too deep. Just a casual glance from him would make one feel as if there was a sharp blade on one's back. It wasn't just the night attack. All the residents of the Empire felt as if there was a huge guillotine on their foreheads. They all ran out of the Empire with all their might. Dustless, is that the strongest Taiga you said? Is it also the first Taiga? Only the inheritor of the royal blood can open the supreme taser? Its appearance seems to be more exaggerated and tall than last time. Looking at the behemoth, even if she saw it last time and fought with it once, Isdeth also lost her mind for a while and her eyes were empty. She didn't know when she had already stood beside Dustless. Ah, you two damn guys, this time you are going to die. You will definitely die and, Supreme Taser, will destroy everything. Minister Ernest laughed crazily and even danced like a child. What is our result? You can't see it and your current identity is just a stray dog. Don't you think you are too talkative? With a flash, Dustless turned into a huge light and arrived in front of Minister Ernest. Staring at his fat body, he quickly waved out a few light beams in succession. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The blood flew, and the ground was instantly filled with purple-red blood stains. Looking up, Minister Ernest's arms and legs were cut off, and the blood dyed the whole ground red. The air was smelly, it seemed to be smelled by the purple-red blood. Ah, it hurts. Your Majesty, revenge for me, kill this bastard. Minister Ernest screamed miserably, the hysterical voice was full of endless hatred for Dustless. Tut-tut, dying casually is too easy for you, old dog. Isdeth, I will tell you a good way to torture people. Find a large porcelain bottle, throw Minister Ernest into it, put poisonous snakes, rats and scorpions in it, and then put honey on Minister Ernest's body and finally, put tens of thousands of ants in it. Puff. Dustless hadn't finished his words when the old guy fainted. Looking carefully, his breath had disappeared. It wasn't hard to see from his frightened face that this old guy was scared to death. Chapter 1671. This scene was too sudden. Even Isdeth didn't expect such a dramatic change. Minister Ernest, who was regarded as a devil by everyone, was scared to death by the absurdity. The torture methods you said are good, we are really the same kind of people. Dustless? Isdeth's mouth was flirting with a smile, looking at Dustless's eyes full of emotions. This guy, staring at Isdeth's evil eyes, the spring-watery eyes almost melted Dustless's heart. It was very warm, but Dustless was not happy. Instead, he was a little creepy. It seemed that Isdeth intended to test the methods just mentioned on Dustless once. You dare to? Inside Supreme Taser, the Emperor's indignant roar sounded, followed by a dark red halo, suddenly appeared in the boundless void, and the overwhelming storm swept the entire Imperial capital. Damn it, that guy is desperate. Let's retreat. Najenda saw the flash in Supreme Taser's mouth, and her face was full of fear. The power of the lingering fear could be clearly felt hundreds of meters away. Her skin was about to be torn, and even blood could not help but overflow through the pores. Everyone's heart was uneasy and full of despair. At their level, if they were hit by Supreme Taser, their bodies would be shattered. You dare to use the candlelight to make a fool of yourself? No wonder this country is going to be finished, even the Emperor is an idiot. Dustless sarcastically said. You bastard. Inside the Supreme Taser, the veins on the Emperor's forehead bulged. He clenched his teeth and spat out the 4 words. Killing the Emperor's father, Minister Ernest, was a huge blow to the young Emperor's mental state. Boom boom boom. The originally small energy ball, in an instant, responded to the Emperor's anger and became bigger. Go to hell, traitor of the Empire. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Emperor's scream fell, the huge red energy ball cut through the void, the light of destruction was about to engulf Dustless. Boom boom boom. Because it was too powerful, before it even landed on the ground, the hurricane created by the beam of light had already destroyed a massive number of buildings. The bustling imperial city was left in a mess. Staring at the falling light under everyone's puzzled gaze, Wu Qin lazily raised his right arm, clenched his hand into a fist, and made a posture of preparing to attack. It seemed that he wanted to defeat the light with his bare hands. Could it be that this fellow wants to catch it with his bare hands? The members of the Night Raid widened their eyes, including Isdeth. They were all surprised. She once had a confrontation with Supreme Taser. The result was very unfortunate. At that time, Isdeth, who was sealed by Minister Ernest's trick, was not the opponent of this behemoth at all. Therefore, Isdeth was quite familiar with the power of Supreme Taser. Its strength was unprecedented. Almost no living species in the sea, land, and air could compete with it. Bring it on. Dustless glanced at the incoming attack. His right arm was covered with armament hockey, his feet slammed on the ground, and he jumped up and flew towards the flash. Boom boom boom. The light hit Dustless's body. Everyone was nervous. They thought that he would be blown up by the energy beam, but the result was just the opposite. Phew phew phew. The fluctuation that stopped was sublimated again. The movement that was bigger than before was shaking. The unparalleled light did not fall this time but rose quickly. How is it possible? It can blow that thing away. The members of the night raid were stunned. Everyone looked at the rising light. Everyone's thinking was subverted, and their brain cells were suddenly not enough. They saw that Dustless hit all the light back with his own strength. Is that guy a human being? Not to mention the power of the beam, the temperature can melt a human being, even the bones can be dismembered. Dustless actually hit it back with his mortal body. Is his body made of iron that can ignore the high temperature? No, even if the body is made of iron, it will be melted when it touches the high temperature. How hard is his body? Istetha's small mouth was wide open, and her mouth twitched slightly. Even if she tried to hide the shock in her heart, she was still shocked and speechless. What would happen if a human was close to hundreds or even thousands of degrees Celsius? Needless to say, this person's end would definitely be nothing. But Dustless was still fine at the moment, completely ignoring the blazing high temperature. Not only that, but he also hit back with an even more powerful force. What kind of joke is this? The little emperor who was inside the supreme taser was also taken aback. His eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. Retreat quickly. The emperor panicked and quickly controlled supreme taser, trying to avoid the light that distorted time and space. Although the idea was beautiful, the reality was cruel and ruthless. Supreme Taser, this kind of behemoth, is similar to Susanoo. Its attack power is very strong, but its movement is slow. It can even be said to be sluggish because this kind of move is originally used to attack the enemy, not to escape. Therefore, it was inevitable that the Emperor was hit, and he was sent flying by his own move. Boom boom boom. Attacked by its own move, Supreme Taser's head was fatally injured, and a blazing flame mushroom cloud rose, and the high temperature melted everything. Half of the majestic Supreme Taser's head was destroyed, and even its abdomen was severely injured, showing a scorched pit, and all the equipment was sunken in. Poochie. Suffering such a serious injury, the Emperor inside was naturally not spared. The tyrannical power wave directly made him dizzy, and his head was dizzy and he could fall at any time. Looking around, Supreme Taser's entire body was emitting black smoke. Chapter 1672. Boom boom boom. Supreme Taser finally became an arrow at the end of its flight. Under the horrified gaze of everyone, the huge body finally tilted at an angle. Is it over? The members of the night raid wiped their sweat and sat down at the same time. Their tense nerves also suddenly calmed down, revealing a trace of joy after surviving the disaster. It was certain that if it weren't for Dustless, they would not be crushed by the huge body of Supreme Taser. As a result, these towns didn't even leave the remains of the body. Usually when it's over, it's not over yet. The roar of the sky was everywhere, spreading to every corner of the void. Looking up, Supreme Taser, who was originally tilted, actually stood up again at an incredible angle. This is the strongest Taigu, such a huge monster. It may be destroyed by one move, especially my move. The Emperor's arrogant tone came from inside Supreme Taser. Buzz buzz buzz. In the big mouth full of fangs, there was a dark red halo again. Is this guy the type that can't be killed? When the members of the night raid saw such a scene, their faces suddenly became as pale as paper, showing fear and panic. The high-density energy ball could easily tear their bodies apart. Do you think you are big? Staring at the huge body with a sneer, Dustless sneered without hiding. If you think your body is big, you will win, you will only lose faster. Buzz buzz buzz. Suddenly the golden energy rushed out from Dustless's body, rising to an exaggerated height of hundreds of meters. A ferocious outline stood between the sky and the earth. The head held up the sky and the feet stepped on the ground, representing everything in the world. This guy, is this his true face? Isdeth looked numb. She thought that the invincible figure of Supreme Taser was enough to cheat, who knew that Dustless showed his original appearance in an instant. A samurai wearing a Tengu helmet and heavy armor suddenly appeared out of thin air like a natural disaster. This is... Everyone stared at the golden giant with their mouths agape. The giant was over 100 meters tall and was much taller than Taisei. If one wanted to see the full appearance of this giant, they would have to look up at the starry sky at a 90-degree angle. Damn it, this guy was indeed sent by the heavens to harm the Empire. He can't be allowed to live. The others are just insignificant characters. The emperor inside Supreme Tesser cursed. That exaggerated body was even more terrifying than his Supreme Tesser. Supreme Tesser's height only reached the waist of the complete Consisenu. "It's over," Dustless murmured inside Consisinu's complete body. He used his mind to control Consisinu's movements. Clang 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 clang, the golden greatsword was pulled out of its scabbard. Glaring at Supreme Taser, complete form Consisinu raised the Tachi of light with both hands, and finally slashed down under Dustless's control. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. An invincible shockwave emerged. The moment it appeared, the Imperial City was split into two by that invincible sharpness. Shocking cracks also appeared on the ground. "You want to destroy my empire? Don't even think about it. I will never allow it." The Emperor obviously didn't give up. The thick light in Supreme Tesser's mouth was also shot out in the end. Boom boom boom. The power of these two destructive moves was unimaginably strong. Everywhere they passed, everything was reduced to ruins. Crack. However, it was obvious that the complete form Consisinu's power was stronger. The sharp wind from the blade pierced through the huge light and tore it apart effortlessly. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Under the Emperor's desperate gaze, the hurricane that didn't slow down swept toward Supreme Tesser, who was already a fish on the chopping board. The outer armor was already showing signs of collapsing. Boom boom boom. Under the direct attack of the complete form Consisinu, the mere Supreme Taser immediately collapsed. It showed its weak side that no one knew about. It was killed by the overwhelming power. Not even a corpse was left behind. It was directly slashed apart by the blade, turning into wreckage in various parts that filled the sky. Poochie. The Emperor's entire body was slashed into pieces by the sharpness, turning into a pool of blood and a large amount of broken bones. It's finally over, right? After removing the exaggerated body of the complete form Consisinu, Dustless landed on the ground again. When he raised his head again, he found that everyone's eyes had changed. "This is... You can treat me as a messenger of justice sent by the heavens to punish the Empire." If he said that he was a human, perhaps no one would believe him anymore. This unparalleled power was not something that a human could control. Especially the absolute power of the complete form Consisinu. It shocked everyone, leaving an indelible impression in everyone's mind and soul. It's almost time to retreat. All the problems have been solved. Looking up at the sky, Dustless looked at the blue void, not hiding his fascination and anticipation. Speaking of which, where are Lubbock and Sisinu? Looking around, Dustless found that only the two of them were missing. The rest were all there. Just now, the two of them were blown away by the light of the Supreme Taser. Not even their bones were left. Akame lowered her head and answered. Even though she already had the resolve to be an assassin, she still felt a sense of loss. It was normal for the fish in the moat to be implicated in a fight between two monsters that were dozens of meters tall. The fact that Sisinu and Lubbock were killed could only mean that the two of them were unlucky. This is fate that can't be changed. Dustless shook his head. The Emperor was dead and the Empire had collapsed. Everything was over. The fulfillment of this world had also come to an end. Chapter 1673. Time passed quickly and only a few days had passed. The outside world was no longer suitable for survival. The eternal light of infinite Tsukuyami was reflected on the moon, and everything had entered the end. In the system world, Dustless brought all the members of the Night Raid in. After all, infinite Tsukuyami had arrived, and all living things had entered the end. It was difficult for Akame and others to survive. I originally thought that you were a true gentleman who wouldn't be tempted, but it turns out that you are a great pervert who is even more absurd than the Emperor. At first, the members of the Night Raid were shocked by the pavilions in the system, and there were all kinds of beautiful women and all kinds of characters. Demons, humans, gods, angels. There were all kinds of characters and they were all beautiful. Especially the beautiful figures in the palace, there were countless of them. Cough cough cough. Being pointed at his nose by his death, Wuxia couldn't help but blush even though his face was as thick as the city wall. He quibbled, "Didn't you say it before? If you are strong you can do whatever you want. Why can't I be willful?" His death was speechless and found herself speechless. She once said that this was the privilege of the strong. "You too, it seems good here." The members of the Night Raid were embarrassed and looked at Death, who was staring at them helplessly. They found that this strange world was good. There were as many powerful people as there were sand in the Ganges. They also had no temper and were very easygoing. Perhaps because they were all women, they also had a sense of belonging to this sunny world. Well, you guys go around and get familiar with this world. We will be a family in the future. Waving his hand, Dustless ordered them to leave. Originally, the next world was supposed to be Demon's Tale or the Legend of Qin's Moon. However, when he started writing, he realized that he had forgotten most of the plot. Thus, the next world would be a Fate series for the time being. Demon's Tale and the Legend of Qin would be left for later. In another direction. I don't need to help you with this time's crossing. Dustless looked at the system consciousness Ling, speechlessly. He always felt that this guy was attacking him in a disguised way. I don't have the ability to tear space now. Crossing other worlds is even more impossible for me. Someone will summon you. Ling didn't say much. She just smiled mysteriously. Then, her body turned into a halo of light and disappeared. Her personality hasn't changed at all. She still likes to keep people in suspense. Dustless shook his head and sat down in boredom. Unexpectedly, before he could rest for a minute, he felt an inexplicable force fall on his head. Ka. The void exploded with a bang and a deep black hole appeared above his head. It was deep and gloomy, and on the other side, it was connected to the bottomless universe. What is this? It doesn't look like a spatial tunnel. Dustless frowned. After transmigrating several times, he had gained a new understanding of space tunnels. Although he wasn't too familiar with them, he still had some understanding of them. This bottomless black hole in front of him was clearly not a space tunnel, but rather an inexplicable contract. Is this the thing Ling was talking about? I feel like something is calling out to me. Dustless was at a loss as he felt the pulling force of the black hole. After a final moment of hesitation, he took the initiative and jumped in. He could also hear strange incantations. Master and servant? What the hell is that? Why does it sound so familiar? In the unfamiliar dark space, Dustless thought to himself. Before entering the black hole, he heard strange words like master and servant. Buzz buzz buzz. In the dead silent space, a bright light suddenly swept across. Dustless looked over and carefully felt the special energy fluctuation for a while. After confirming that it wasn't a trap, he finally jumped in without hesitation. How is this possible? The Holy Grail War was only a battle between 7 masters and 7 servants. Why would an 8th master and an 8th servant appear now? This is absolutely impossible. As soon as he arrived in an unfamiliar world, there were shocked voices. At the same time, Dustless also understood where he had arrived. He immediately revealed a knowing smile. Dustless opened his eyes subconsciously, and 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Wei Gongqi? This scum is definitely not my master. After glancing at the middle-aged man, Dustless's eyes fell on the 2 female figures next to him. One of them was a white woman and the other was a blonde girl. Both of them were young and their appearances were superb. It seems to be King Arthur and Alice Phil? It seems that she is my master. His eyes fell on Alice Phil's head, and Dustless looked at the command incantation in her hand and suddenly realized. Miss, I am your servant, and you are my master. Dustless said in a very serious tone. He felt helpless. He didn't understand the so-called incantation at all. And the so-called command incantation seemed to be just for show. It couldn't control Dustless at all. Miss. Listening to Dustless's address, Wei Gongqi and Alice Phil were speechless. Aren't hero spirits all ancient people? Since when were ancient people so fashionable? Also, what's with Dustless's clothes? He was wearing casual clothes and sports shoes. The combination was quite reasonable, and he looked very avant-garde. He was even more fashionable than the people in today's society. He didn't look like an ancient person at all. There's something weird about this guy. Saber looked at Dustless strangely. She couldn't tell what was weird about him. Forget it, we have 2 servants here. We have an absolute advantage compared to other masters who are weak. Chapter 1674. Saber was overjoyed and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Although she did not know how the 8th master and servant appeared, the benefits were definitely greater than the disadvantages. After all, Wei Gongqi was Alice Phil's husband, so there was no doubt that Dustless was also an ally in the trenches. This way their chances of winning would be much higher. After staring at Dustless for a while, Wei Gongqi frowned and asked, "That's strange. What, holy relic, did you use to summon this guy?" "You mean the holy relic?" Alice Phil could not help but smile bitterly. Who knew how Dustless appeared? She did not even chant a spell, nor did she prepare a magic circle. However, a command spell appeared in her hand out of nowhere, and Dustless, this mysterious guest, also appeared as a servant. Holy relic? Dustless also had a headache. Looking at Wei Gongqi's questioning eyes, he was speechless for a moment. Then, he waved his hand and said impatiently, "A handsome servant does not need a holy relic." Ah! The three of them were stunned as they stared at Dustless. This was the first time they encountered such a strange heroic spirit. "Is there something wrong with your head? Or did something go wrong during the summoning ritual?" Saber complained. She was quite dissatisfied with Dustless. Wasn't he mocking the servant that needed to be summoned? "Although I don't know what's going on, one thing is for sure. In this Holy Grail war, our advantage is far greater than our disadvantage." Wei Gongqi could not figure it out. There were too many unsolved mysteries in this world. If he could not figure it out, then he could only muddle through. "What is your position?" Alice Phil blinked and asked curiously. "Position?" Dustless complained. He was just an intruder who came in halfway. To put it bluntly, he was an illegal immigrant. Where could he find a proper account for himself? Naturally, there was no such thing as a position. "I am..." Dustless lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then his eyes lit up and he replied loudly, "My job is in it. Let's get along harmoniously in the future." And Saber, Wei Gongqi, and Alice Phil looked at each other. This position meant the end of everything. Forget it, there's no need to worry about such trivial matters. The location of the Holy Grail War, this time, is Dongmu City. The few of us will rush over tomorrow. But I've only booked 3 tickets at the moment. Wei Gongqi revealed an apologetic expression. The 3 of them were himself, Saber, Alice and Phil. "Don't worry, I can fly over." Dustless smiled and said politely. Even though he didn't like the man in front of him, he still had to follow basic etiquette. "It can fly." Saber, Wei Gongqi and Alice Phil were shocked. A spirit that could fly? Was that still a heroic spirit? He had never heard of heroic spirits being able to fly. There's nothing to be surprised about. Compared to Saber, I can't be more ordinary. With a modest smile on his face, Dustless said calmly. "In that case, let's have a good night's rest. We'll rush to Dongmu City tomorrow." On the plane the next day, Wei Gongqi, Alice, Phil and Saber boarded the plane together. Only Dustless set off alone, feeling bored. But before leaving, Wei Gongqi asked Dustless to bring along a person, Jianghu Mamie. This person was saved by Wei Gongqi once when she was young, and they were like childhood friends. "Miss Mamie, it's the first time we meet, please take care of me." Dustless elegantly extended his right arm with an imperceptible smile on his face. "You get along well." Seeing Dustless's action, Jianghu Mamie was stunned. How is this a heroic spirit? He's no different from a modern person, not like an old-fashioned heroic spirit at all. "Let's go." Staring at the plane taking off in the distance, Dustless suddenly reached out and hugged Jianghu Mamie. "What are you doing? Let go of me. A heroic spirit is so lascivious, you're a weirdo." Jianghu Mamie, who was in a trance for a moment, snapped back to reality. "Let go?" Dustless ignored it when he heard that and retorted with a question. "If I let go of you, how can I bring you along to fly together? Don't tell me you want to hug me? In that case, of course it's fine, but the premise is that you don't think that I'm taking advantage of you." "You?" Jianghu Mamie was dumbfounded. She was speechless by Dustless's words. She could only be silent and let Dustless hug her snake-like waist. Jianghu Mamie's face was slightly red, and then she remembered the task that Wei Gongqi gave her and returned to normal. This guy can really fly. Looking down at the sky below, Jianghu Mamie's eyes were in a daze. The charming scenery was panoramic. She was a little obsessed for a moment and her mind was blank. "Don't call me Guy, I'm a heroic spirit. You can call my job title END, but compared to the so-called job title, I prefer you to call me by my name, Dustless." Staring at the large passenger plane in front, Dustless explained in a rather bored manner. "Dustless? I understand, but you're really a strange heroic spirit," Jianghu Mamie whispered. Although her voice was very soft, Dustless still heard it clearly. It just so happened that right at this moment, Wu Chen's sudden words caused her expression to go grim. Chapter 1675. "Miss Jianghu Mamie? Anyway, we still have a long time, let me guess your motive." The bored Dustless smiled and looked at Jianghu Mamie. He ignored her expression and said to himself, "Logically speaking, you should have known that the Holy Grail War would be held in Dongmu City, and you should have already booked the tickets. You are Wei Gongqi's assistant and that guy is very smart. It is impossible for him to forget to book the tickets for you. Then there is only one possibility." Ignoring Jianghu Mamie's stunned expression, Dustless continued to analyze. If you are with me, it is just to test my ability, right? If you think that I am useless, I guess you will set a trap to lure other servants to kill me, and you and Wei Gong Qixi will ambush the other party's master, right? What a cunning and smart vile man. Dustless explained to himself. His expression was calm, as if what he said was just a small matter. In fact, Dustless hated Wei Gong Qixi very much. He was extremely despicable. Of course, Dustless also belonged to the despicable and shameless type. He was not qualified to criticize others, but there should be a bottom line for everything. For the so-called justice, he used his own wife as bait and let Alice Phil pretend to be Saber's master to lure other masters to kill him. Who else could be so despicable? For the sake of justice, he actually used his own wife as bait. Yo! At this moment, Dustless suddenly felt that his head was cold. He turned his head and saw a black pistol aimed at his head. You have such an intense behavior, which means that my previous guess was true. Gently shaking his head, Dustless felt that Jiu Mami and Alice Phil were not worth it. They were sacrificed for that scum Wei Gong Qixi. Who are you? Jiu Mami's eyes were cold and her tone was unfriendly. Pointing a gun at a heroic spirit? You are playing with fire. Dustless replied indifferently as he looked at the void in front of him. I just want to tell you that if you and Wei Gong Qixi have any unrealistic plans against me, you better give up as soon as possible. We are now allies in the same trench. I'm also very interested in the Holy Grail. Moreover, you're just a mere human. Don't you think you're too naive and laughable to scheme against a heroic spirit? Dustless sneered coldly. Don't you dare look down on humans? Takumi Jiu snorted in dissatisfaction. Besides, no matter how powerful or special you are, you're still just a human when you're alive. This guy is really ignorant. Dustless could not help but laugh when he heard that. So this guy actually thought that he was dead. However, most heroic spirits were like that. They were all summoned to participate in the Holy Grail War. Not everyone was as cheat-like as Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a series of sonic booms suddenly sounded in front of them. The mysterious object's tail was covered in flames, and it directly blasted towards the flying plane. It didn't matter that Dustless did not recognize it, but Takumi Jiu, who was often in contact with firearms, was shocked. She said in panic, "Oh no, that thing is a cruise missile." Cruise missile? Hearing that, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise and then he frowned. This kind of thing was naturally useless against him. Not to mention a cruise missile, even if an atomic bomb came, it would be useless. With Saber's strength, she would probably be fine. However, whether or not Wei Gong Qixi and Alice Phil would be spared was a question mark. Boom boom boom. The speed of the missile was beyond imagination. When Dustless was about to intercept it, the flying plane was attacked by the missile and instantly exploded into a pile of fire. Qixi. Takumi Jiu shouted nervously and worriedly. The first thing she was worried about was not Saber and Alice Phil. It was enough to prove that the relationship between the two was extraordinary. I'm fine. Through his perverted vision, Dustless saw that in the explosion of the fire, the three of them were fine. It's normal for Alice Phil to be fine with Saber's protection? But why is Wei Gong Qixi safe and sound? That light? Could it be the sheath of the holy sword Avalon? Dustless thought to himself. He saw that Wei Gong Qixi's body was flowing with holy light. He was not injured, but the passengers on the plane could not escape the nightmare. They were all killed by the cruise missile. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Although their lives were saved because they were in the sky, the three of them quickly fell down. Wanxiang Tianing. His left arm erupted with a strong gravitational force, and the three people who fell to the sea were forcibly absorbed by Dustless. Such a convenient ability, not bad. Floating around Dustless, Saber and the other two were relieved. They stared at Dustless nervously, afraid that this guy would be distracted and throw them down. Although I don't know what happened, one thing is certain, it should be the other masters who attacked us. Dustless analyzed seriously and looked at Wei Gong Qixi with a strained expression. He said with difficulty, "My gravitational control is average, I can only support 2 people flying. So, it's all my fault for being useless, I'm really sorry. How about this, Wei Gong Qixi, I'll temporarily put you on the Pacific Ocean and leave with Saber and Alice Phil first. You can swim to Dongmu City by yourself, how about that?" This guy. Wei Gong Qixi was furious when he heard that. This is the center of the Pacific Ocean, you want me to swim to Japan? This vulgar and low-level joke was simply too bad. Chapter 1676. Swimming from the Pacific Ocean to Japan? Are you out of your mind? Before Kamiya Kazi could refute, Kuyumimiya yelled, "That's impossible. No human in this world can swim from the Pacific Ocean to Japan. DSK, I'm just a special case. Although I'm using my flying ability." Dustless smiled and teased, "All in all, I can only carry 3 people at most: Saber, Alice, Faye, and you. As for the others, I'm sorry I can't help." "Is that so? Then you can take the 3 of them and leave." Kamiya Kazi sighed and waved his hand, "I'll call a ship. When we reach Dongwu City you must be careful, especially Yanfeng Chili. You must pay attention to him. I suspect that the cruise missile incident was done by that guy. I have a very dangerous feeling. That guy will be the strongest enemy we'll ever meet. No matter what, he's just a human." Dustless pursed his lips. Yanfeng Chili was indeed dangerous when humans fought against humans. However, if he was caught by a hero spirit, he would be nothing more than an ant. "Where's the person who attacked us?" Saber widened her eyes and wiped her mouth. She carefully looked down at the large number of uninhabited islands in the sea below. She could not find where the person who attacked them was hiding. "There are too many scattered islands." Saber smiled apologetically. Although she was a hero spirit, she was not a god. She could not find a person on the ground hundreds of meters away or even 1,000 meters in the air. "Leave it to me." Dustless smiled and said, "As long as all these islands are sunk, no matter if it's master or servant, they won't be able to escape." Kakaka. As soon as he finished speaking, a high-density energy ball appeared in front of Dustless's thumb. As the force was too strong, the surrounding void was distorted and collapsed. "Who ordered you to use your noble phantasm?" Kamiya Kazi shouted angrily. "Noble phantasm?" Dustless glanced at Kamiya Kazi and said coldly, "If this is a noble phantasm, then I have too many of them." Wang Su's flash. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a flick of his finger, the energy ball shot out towards the scattered islands on the ground. Boom boom boom. The calm sea surface trembled and waves that were dozens of meters high splashed. Then the scattered islands in an extremely simple manner. Gulu. Saber couldn't help but be stunned when she saw the exaggerated range of the attack. Even with such a large distance, it was still able to raise an island hundreds of meters away to the ground. The power of the attack was self-evident. No matter what, as long as there are masters and servants on this island, they're all dead meat. Wu Chen's narration was as light as a breeze. It was as if he had done something like eating and drinking water. It was unbelievably calm. Bastard. Wei Gongqi, who regained his senses, was enraged. He glared at Wu Chen. He always felt that this rascal was always going against him. "You've sunk all the islands, what about me?" Kamiya Kazi's expression was bitter. Dustless's flying ability could only carry 3 people at most. Hence he had to stay behind. Now that the islands had sunk, how could he accept it? "That's your problem, Mr. Master?" Dustless smiled innocently. To be honest, he had purposely tricked Kamiya Kazi. "Goodbye, Kamiya Kazi. Swim all the way to Dongwu City." With a smile, the gravitational force on Kamiya Kazi disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A black shadow fell straight into the sea. "Master, are you sure you're okay? What if the other servants attack you?" Saber asked anxiously. She stared at Dustless and then at Alice Phil. "It's okay. Since Kamiya Kazi asked us to leave first, he must have other ways to get to Dongwu City. Everyone please believe in him." Alice Phil did not show much emotion. She smiled and explained, "I believe in Kamiya Kazi. He will definitely be able to get through this." "Master, your relationship is really deep. I'm envious of you." Dustless made a jealous expression and immediately pointed to the sea below and said, "You may not have noticed, but I, with my special ability, happened to see Kamiya Kazi being chased by a group of sharks, Dongmu City. In an obscure and unknown room, 2 middle-aged men were conversing. One of them was dressed like a middle-aged priest, while the other was an elegant man in a red suit, Toshimi Nagasaka. Kiri, have you found the trace of the 8th Einherjar?" Toshiomi looked at the man in front of him expectantly. "Found it? This is the video of that guy. At that time, my assassin attacked him." Yanfeng Kiri handed the save video to Toshiomi. "Did that guy find assassin?" While staring at the video with interest, Toshiomi Inaka asked calmly on the other side. "I don't think so. Assassin is good at assassination. The 8th Einherjar did not find him." Yanfeng Kiri said truthfully. "Is that so? It seems like he's just an insignificant character. Don't worry." Toshiomi was relieved and labeled Dustless as a cheap guy. "That's not right." Toshiomi frowned and asked, "Since he did not find Assassin, how did Assassin get killed by someone else?" This Yanfeng Kiri said helplessly. Although assassin was not found, that guy seemed to be enraged. He used his noble relic to destroy all the islands. Assassin was also killed instantly. All the islands were sunk by him. Chapter 1677. In other words, he used his noble phantasm to destroy all the islands. Seems to be quite powerful. He seems to be a powerful hero spirit, but he's just an idiot who doesn't use his brain. This was the first time he had heard of such a willful heroic spirit. However, after thinking about it carefully, he understood. Heroic spirits like this were sometimes easier to deal with. An intelligent and powerful figure was the most difficult to deal with. It's good to be impulsive. Then, Toshiomi Inaka smiled in relief and said in a tone that suggested there was nothing to be afraid of. There's no need to worry. There's no need to be afraid of such a powerful young heroic spirit. A poisonous snake that knows how to endure and hide in the dark is the most terrifying. Toshiomi smiled elegantly and poured himself a glass of red wine. He was glad that Dustless was an idiot who did not know when to stop. But, Yin Fengili frowned slightly. Master hasn't had the time to watch the video. That guy's master seems to be Takemiya Cheshire's wife, Alice Phil. Pfft. Hearing that, he spat out the red wine that he had just drunk. His good mood was gone. Toshiomi Enosaka's face was dark, and his hands were sweating. If that was the case, Alice Field would definitely do her best to assist Wei Gong Chizi in obtaining the Holy Grail. Even if Dustless was an idiot with low IQ, his destructive power was still extremely strong. No matter how bad a heroic spirit's combat power was, it was definitely stronger than a human's. When did they come to Dongmu City? Once they arrive, order your assassin to ambush them immediately. Also, send this video to the other masters through the secret channel. If everyone knows about it, we might work together to deal with them. The assassin that was killed by Dustless was just a clone of assassin. In the evening, Dustless, who was dragging 3 people, finally arrived at Dongmu City. As soon as they arrived at their destination, Takeo Juyu left impatiently. She might have gone to look for Takemiya Cheshire. TSK, Miss Takeo Juyu and Mr. Takemiya are really close. Dustless walked to Alice Phil and deliberately raised his voice to insinuate something. You, Saber reflexively kicked out, but Dustless dodged in time. However, Saber was Saber after all. She turned around and hugged Dustless tightly. Then she dragged Dustless a short distance away. Are you trying to sow discord between us? As far as heroic spirits are concerned, this is simply too despicable. Saber, who was holding on to Dustless tightly, scolded loudly, please don't do anything that will tarnish the reputation of the heroic spirits. Everyone will be humiliated if you do that. Cough, cough, cough. Before we talk, can you please send me off first? Dustless awkwardly glanced at Saber, who was hugging him tightly. He lowered his head and said helplessly, Saber, with all due respect, you don't seem to understand the nature of the Holy Grail War. Dustless, do you think I'm an ignorant little girl? How can I not understand this kind of thing? Saber pouted and complained unhappily. She felt that her intelligence was being insulted by Dustless. The so-called Holy Grail War was actually 7 sorcerers and their heroic spirits fighting against each other. The end result was also quite simple. The winner was king. No, you misunderstood me. Dustless shook his head when he heard that. His eyes shone brightly as he explained, the reason why you joined the Holy Grail War this time should be because of the universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail, right? To be honest, I'm actually here for it as well. However, everyone seems to have gotten one thing wrong. Aren't all the Sarvant and Satyr doing this for the same purpose? Saber nodded affirmatively. No, everyone has made a mistake. The so-called Holy Grail can only fulfill one person's wish, and us candidates, including all the Masters and Sarvant, have a total of 14 people. No. After including myself and Alice Phil, the total number of candidates added up to 16. Dustless raised his voice and said meaningfully, even if you defeat everyone in the end, do you think Wei Gong Keisai will give the Holy Grail to you? Keisai will probably give the Holy Grail to me. Saber lowered her head in uncertainty. Who knows what choice Wei Gong Keisai will make in the end? Saber, I can tell you clearly. If you win and defeat all the Masters and Sarvant, then Wei Gong Keisai will probably use the command spell to make you commit suicide. This way the Holy Grail will be his alone. That guy has an extremely naive dream. He wants to eliminate all evil in this world. This is simply a fool's dream. Such a thing is impossible. Where there are people, there will be conflict. This is fated. Unless that guy wipes out all of humanity, then there will only be justice left in this world. Dustless's tone was filled with a bewitching charm. Every word he said was like a gem to Saber. It was very convincing. After all, these were undeniable facts. In the original work, Inaka Tashimi had actually planned to do so. After the Hero King killed all the heroic spirits, Inaka Tashimi would use the command spell to order Gilgamesh to commit suicide. His method was very sinister. How would you know such a thing? Saber stared at Dustless with a face full of questions. About this, Dustless felt a headache coming on. He couldn't possibly say that he had transmigrated, right? He could only make up a reason to fool Saber. You immature fledglings do not understand the truth. I have participated in 3 Holy Grail wars. No. Including this Holy Grail war, I have participated in 4 Holy Grail wars. In the past, I had helped the masters defeat all their enemies. However, those 3 shameless masters used the command spell to order me to commit suicide. Chapter 1678. Saber was stunned when she heard that. She stared at Dustless and fixed her gaze on him. She could not move anymore. She did not expect Dustless to have such a torturous experience. I don't think Jishi is that kind of person. After hesitating for a while, Saber finally chose to believe Jishi. It's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Most of my previous masters were cunning and despicable anyway, Dustless said nonchalantly. He knew that his plan to trick Saber into betraying him had failed. If it was a Chunibu like Gilgamesh, he might have been able to trick her into betraying Tashimi Nagasaka. No. In the original work, Gilgamesh betrayed Tashimi Nagasaka and joined Yenfeng Chili. However, Saber was different. It was impossible for her to be as unprincipled as Gilgamesh. She deeply believed in the spirit of chivalry and viewed traitors as disgraceful scum. It was unrealistic to think that he would betray Wei Gong Kisi with just a few words. Moreover, even if Saber betrayed Jishi, she did not seem to have a suitable master. At that moment, Dustless suddenly raised his eyebrows. The boredom on his face disappeared and was replaced by excitement. Is there something wrong? Saber asked with a frown. She subconsciously looked at Alice Phil. She and Dustless were both powerful heroic spirits. Naturally, they would not be afraid of other heroic spirits. The only weak one was Alice Phil, who was her master. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. He looked at Alice Phil. As expected, a black shadow was rushing toward them. How despicable. Saber snorted angrily. She quickly swooped down with her sword. His aura is hidden very well. It's almost impossible to catch him. Moreover, this Sarvankt is a new face. Could he be assassin who specializes in assassination? He has a lot of doppelgangers. His methods are despicable, but he's smart. He knows that it's not me and Saber, so he's actively looking for weaker prey to attack. Dustless touched his chin. He suddenly thought of a black-bellied priest, Yenfeng Chili. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from behind him. Dustless subconsciously turned his head, and a cold dagger was mercilessly stabbing towards his heart. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force erupted, and the black shadow that had launched a sneak attack was immediately sent flying. Boom boom boom. The black shadow that was sent flying smashed into the surrounding streets, leaving a long mark on the ground. It seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage and there were obvious dents on its body. Is it really assassin? Dustless raised his eyebrows and subconsciously glanced at Saber's opponent, who was also assassin. There seemed to be quite a number of such doppelgangers. Yenfeng Chili? Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, and a fierce look flashed across his face. Aiming at the wailing black shadow, a cold light flashed from his fingertip and mercilessly shot over. Void flash. The colorful energy ball charged up for a moment before it locked onto Assassin and blasted toward her. Boom boom boom. The powerful flash swept her away, and the streets on both sides were instantly turned into nothingness by the energy released by Void Flash. At the same time, Saber's battle also came to an end. The result was without a doubt, Saber had completely defeated her opponent. This combination is very troublesome, Master. In a secret room somewhere, Yenfeng, Chili and Tashiomi Inaka sat together. The battle screen in front of them was the scene of Dustless and Saber's battle. Yeah, both of them are pretty strong. That Saber is the strongest job class, and this strange E&D is also a pretty strong heroic spirit. Tashiomi Inaka nodded solemnly and couldn't help but feel annoyed. Originally, he and Yenfeng, Chili, and a strong heroic spirit like Gilgamesh had given them the confidence to win this Holy Grail war. Who would have thought that the 8th heroic spirit would suddenly jump out? E&D Dustless. He had ruined a great victory. Just thinking about it made Tashiomi Inaka feel constipated. Moreover, E&D Dustless and Saber were bound to be an iron alliance. It couldn't be broken up so easily. After all, their masters were husband and wife. We can also join forces with the other masters. An idea flashed through Yanfeng's mind. He leaned close to Tashiomi Inaka's ear and whispered, "Master, we can totally do that. For example, we can join forces with that guy. Despicable and vile people. Leave that kind of bastard to me alone." At that moment, an extremely arrogant and disdainful voice sounded. A golden flash entered Yanfeng, Chili, and Tashiomi Inaka's eyes. Looking at it carefully, this person was completely golden. He wore golden armor and had short golden hair. His expression was unruly, as arrogant as a god looking down on ants. "Where are those two bastards? Tell me and I'll personally eliminate these two eyesores." Gilgamesh said arrogantly, "Joining forces with the other heroic spirits is an insult to this king. But, let's see the situation first." Tashiomi Inaka was secretly angry, but facing Gilgamesh, he really couldn't bring out any confidence. He could only nod and agree. In fact, he really wanted to say to Gilgamesh, "You are a super big idiot who doesn't care about anyone else." In fact, at this moment, not only Tashiomi Inaka and Yanfeng, but the other masters and servants were also frowning. In the previous Holy Grail War, such a thing had never happened. Two heroic spirits stood on the same side, while the other heroic spirits were all alone. In comparison, they were at a great disadvantage. Chapter 1679. My king. Why don't we observe for a while? Find out how Saber and the male heroic spirit's noble phantasm are moving. Tashiomi Enosaka's expression was respectful as he lowered his head. He was more respectful than seeing his own father. "What you say makes sense, you bastard. This one will listen to your arrangements. I hope this gathering won't make this one feel bored and depressed." Gilgamesh's body lost its texture and turned into a golden light that dissipated. The Hero King's ability to put on airs is better than fighting. Yanfeng Chili saw the miserable Tashiomi Enosaka and couldn't help but shake his head. Sometimes, it's not necessarily a good thing for a heroic spirit to be too strong. Tashiomi Enosaka was called a bastard and he couldn't refute it, but he had to be respectful. You can imagine how depressed Tashiomi Enosaka was. At this time, in another direction, more and more assassin doppelgangers came to attack from all directions. It was obvious that they had been deliberately instructed to attack Alice Phil, who was weaker in terms of strength. 90 Black Coffin. The black light that was enough to cut a mountain flashed out of thin air and cut the assassins in front of them. Even so, there were still many splits. There are too many assassins. Saber's hair was slightly messy and she was panting, looking tired. Their intention is very simple. They want to force us to use our noble phantasm. Dustless was familiar with Yanfeng Chili's intention. "I'm afraid that we have been targeted by many heroic spirits." Observation hockey spread out, and the scene within a few hundred meters fell into Dustless's eyes. Oh. The final king Gilgamesh, the Conqueror King, and Lancer Delumudo Odina are secretly watching the changes in the battle. Dustless's mouth curled into an imperceptible smile. In the original work, Lancer might have come out to cause trouble at this time. Now that Dustless and Saber were allies, this unexpected change might make him hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. For a moment, he hesitated whether to go to war with Dustless and Saber. Whoosh! Several sharp sounds came into his ears. Dustless looked up and saw more than a dozen noble phantasms pouring down. This dazzling light. Is it the king's treasure? Dustless's face showed a nostalgic look. The ability of Gate of Babylon was not limited to Gilgamesh. "But it's really a pity that your opponent is me," Dustless said softly as the spiritual pressure in his body surged. Binding Path's 81st step, air severing. In an instant, a transparent barrier appeared in front of Dustless. "How dare you try to block this king's light with such a fragile object? You're overestimating yourself." The street lamp suddenly turned black as a stream of light materialized. Standing on it was none other than Hero King Gilgamesh. "Bastards who are hiding in the surroundings, come out for this king." Gilgamesh's arrogant eyes swept across the surroundings. His voice was like thunder, spreading over a radius of several hundred meters. "Who is this arrogant heroic spirit? Since you're so arrogant, do you dare to tell me your name?" Lancer, who was holding two guns, had no choice but to walk out from the darkness. "Who knows? I didn't expect that other than me, there would be someone else who dares to call himself a king." A rough and heroic voice came from the sky. A tall and strong man who was riding 2 mighty bulls also descended from the sky. However, among these 8 heroic spirits, one of them is about to die. How sad. Gilgamesh looked down at Dustless arrogantly. He turned a deaf ear to the barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Bang, bang, bang. The falling treasures all landed on the enchantment. Everyone thought that the enchantment would collapse on the spot, but who would have thought that it was unexpectedly sturdy and nothing happened at all? On the contrary, Gilgamesh's attacks were all blocked. You're just a so-called king. You don't know your place. Dustless looked at Gilgamesh hopelessly. He couldn't help but find it funny. After all, he was just the king of a narrow land. What did he have to be so arrogant? You bastard! When Gilgamesh heard what was said, his face twisted. His scarlet eyes were filled with anger. Gilgamesh felt that he was being humiliated by Dustless's unscrupulous gaze. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless ripples appeared in the void behind him. Soon after, a large number of golden weapons appeared. Each of them was dazzling and sharp. They could all be called masterpieces. It was undeniable that Gilgamesh was only interested in the best items. He probably wouldn't even look at trash. This guy, the Conquest King, had a serious expression. He looked at the large amount of light above Gilgamesh's head and couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. At first glance, they were all relics. You can tell where this guy came from? Which era is he a hero from? Conquest King Iskandar asked the skinny young man beside him. Who knows? In short, this guy is very strong. The young man rolled his eyes and said, I asked you to watch the battle, but you insisted on coming out to cause trouble. You even said that you wanted to persuade the other heroic spirits to be your subordinates. Such actions are extremely foolish. The young man was called Weber Velvet, Conquest King Iskandar's master. Although I don't know which era Golden Twinkle came from, there might be a heroic spirit appearing now. Lancer looked at the gorgeous light with a serious expression. He didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, his gaze locked onto Dustless was filled with pity. Be careful, Dustless. Saber also noticed the abnormality here. She quickly rushed over to provide support, but she was forcefully stopped by Assassin. Both parties were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Seems like I have been underestimated. Dustless touched his nose in amusement. Without giving Gilgamesh a chance to attack, he turned into a flash and appeared behind him. The light was fleeting and no one noticed it. They only saw Dustless suddenly vanishing. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Hero King. Chapter 1680. With the speed of light reaching nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, even if a god came, wanting to see Dustless's trajectory clearly was no different from a dream, much less a mere heroic spirit. Who dares to sneak an attack on this king? Upon hearing this contemptuous voice, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately turned his head. However, what struck him in return was a destructive beam of light. It was so blinding that Gilgamesh's eyes were nearly blinded. He hurriedly closed his eyes. Lightspeed kick. Hero King Gilgamesh suddenly felt an excruciating pain in his face, as though his bones were about to break. He was instantly sent flying. This merciless kick had sent Gilgamesh vanishing without a trace. Bam! The land hundreds of meters away suddenly trembled. Only then did everyone see the miserable Gilgamesh lying on the ground half dead. He only had a weak aura left, but he was barely able to survive. He's so fast. I didn't even see how he appeared behind that golden shimmering body. Web Velvet looked as though he had seen a ghost. Idiot. Even I didn't see it, much less a dabbler like you. Conquest King Iskandar punched Web in the head in a bad mood. His expression was somewhat gloomy. Everyone believed that Dustless was about to be finished off, but who knew that this fellow's tiny universe would erupt, instantly crushing the golden shimmering body? Is that the power of a treasure artifact? Lancer was similarly dumbfounded. He suddenly felt thankful that his enemy was not Dustless, or his outcome would definitely be no different from Gilgamesh's. Furthermore, it wasn't only the Conquest King. In fact, even Lancer did not see how Dustless moved. Bastard, 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 bastard. Hero King Gilgamesh touched his cheek. In his rage, he hammered the ground angrily. His right hand was a bloody mess, but he did not feel any pain. Ka. Hero King Gilgamesh's heart shattered into sand, forever unable to heal. As he touched his face, a gigantic footprint was imprinted on his face like a birthmark. This was all thanks to Dustless. Wow, you have become a lot more handsome. After carefully scrutinizing Hero King Gilgamesh, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and continued striking him. As expected of a king. That handsome face of yours is definitely unparalleled. Dustless's words attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked at Hero King Gilgamesh's face in unison as they roared with laughter. Ah, what's up with that guy? There's actually a shoe print on his face. Coupled with his sullen expression, it's just too exciting. Iskandar the Conquest King laughed so hard that his eyes were watering and his stomach was hurting. It's indeed comical. Lancer wore an odd expression as he stared at the footprint on Hero King Gilgamesh's face. Aha, well done. It's best if this hateful Hero King is beaten up by others. Haha. Toshiomi Enosaka, who was in the same room as Yenfeng Kiri, also saw this scene through a special screen. When he saw the clear shoe print on Hero King Gilgamesh's face, he felt abnormally refreshed. He even specially opened a bottle of champagne. Darn Hero King. It's good that he's taught a lesson like this. It saves him the trouble of putting on that disgusting face of his all day. This guy doesn't have any awareness of being a servant. It's as though I owe him everything. Toshiomi Enosaka took a sip of his red wine and smiled elegantly. There was nothing wrong with Gilgamesh suffering a setback. It allowed him to face the strength of other heroic spirits. It would save him the trouble of calling himself a bastard every time he opened his mouth. That heroic spirit sure is ridiculously strong. He was able to send Hero King Gilgamesh flying with a kick. He must have been an important figure when he was alive. That punk Kamiya Kaseki sure is lucky. It's fine if he has Saber helping him, but now he has such a powerful heroic spirit. He's like a tiger that has grown wings. Yenfeng Kiri looked nervous and was not as happy as Toshiomi Enosaka. In a short period of time, his assassin army was nearly wiped out. Let's join forces with the other masters. That way our chances of victory will be greater. Toshiomi Enosaka was secretly delighted for a moment before regaining his composure. After all, Hero King Gilgamesh was his servant. It was fine to be happy for him, but he could not kick him while he was down. After all, they still had to work together to deal with the other masters. Is that all you've got? You can call yourself a king with such half-baked standards? I think I can become a god. Squinting his eyes, Dustless teased with a faint smile. Tisk. That face of yours is so domineering no matter how I look at it. Bastard, don't get carried away. Hero King Gilgamesh stared at Dustless with a ferocious expression. A beam of light that was hundreds of meters long appeared in the void. At least a few thousand treasures flew out from it. This punk will use parting sword sooner or later after being provoked by me. Dustless stroked his chin. He was also the owner of the king's treasure, so he naturally understood Gilgamesh's ability. So. Cold beams shot over like torrential rain. Thousands of weapons launched their attacks at the same time. The scene was extremely spectacular. Conquest King Iskandar and Lancer quickly retreated, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. How can such attacks be effective against me? There's no need to even dodge, much less defend against them. Dustless shook his head and simply stood in place without moving. Puchi. His body was constantly being shattered by the sword beams, but Dustless did not fall to the ground. He did not even bleed or suffer from the most basic injuries. This scene dealt a heavy blow to Hero King Gilgamesh. The enemy was right in front of you, but you did not have the ability to hurt him. Instead, you were being humiliated and ridiculed by your opponent. Was there anything more tragic than this in the world? Hero King Gilgamesh hated Dustless to the core. This rascal had looked down on him for no reason. Now he had even used sorcery to ignore his attacks. He felt extremely aggrieved. Gilgamesh felt terrible and was about to explode. Chapter 1681. Gilgamesh's face was contorted. It was no wonder he was so furious. He had an extremely conceited temper to begin with. He could not tolerate sand in his eyes. For an ordinary person to look at him directly was the greatest insult to Gilgamesh. Now that Dustless had taught him a lesson, Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. No matter how he attacked, he was unable to harm Dustless. That calm face was silently mocking Gilgamesh's powerlessness and frailty. I'll stand here and let you hit me. The key is, can you hit me? You have completely infuriated me, bastard. Gilgamesh's face was even more contorted. His scarlet eyeballs protruded outwards as though they could fall out at any moment. He was really about to go berserk. I've never liked to cause trouble, but Dustless's eyelids lifted slightly as he revealed a cold look. If you insist on courting death, if I don't teach you a lesson, I'll be looking down on you, the hero king. With just you? This king shall tell you. Before Gilgamesh could finish his words, tragedy struck. Yomi no Miyazaka. Dustless's forehead revealed a scarlet samsara Sharingan as he appeared behind Gilgamesh without any warning. He delivered another merciless kick. Lightspeed kick. Boom, boom, boom. Gilgamesh's body exploded with flames once again as he was engulfed by the flames. His beautiful golden armor was covered in dust as he was sent retreating by Dustless's kick. He was in a sorry state. At this moment, a sharp beam suddenly came from behind and was about to pierce through Dustless's head. Clang, 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 clang. At the critical moment, a black figure blocked the sneak attack with a sword. Like a shield, she defended Dustless's back. The cold beam was also intercepted by Saber. You should thank me, Dustless. The person who came to his rescue was Dustless's ally, Saber. Thank you? Saber, do you think I'll be finished off by a scoundrel? Dustless turned his head slightly and glanced at the person who was fighting with Saber. It was Lancer. I don't think you're the kind of person who would ambush someone. Is this Master's command curse? Dustless lowered his head and fell silent as he stared at Lancer, who was drenched in cold sweat and had a pained expression. I have no choice but to destroy you. Dustless, who had kicked Gilgamesh away, suddenly looked at Lancer's head. His eyes turned cold, and the tip of his thumb was already glowing with a destructive light. This guy is my opponent. Seeing that Dustless was about to intervene, Saber hurriedly shouted to stop him. She exerted force in her arms and instantly forced Lancer to retreat. Then Saber chased after Lancer and launched a fierce attack. She looks like a woman on the outside, but she's a powerful lion on the inside. Lancer looked at Saber in shock. That powerful force had numbed his arm. You should be able to kill me quickly if you join forces with that guy. Why did you let go of such a good opportunity? Lancer expressed his confusion. He knew Dustless's strength. If he joined forces with Saber, it would only be a matter of time before they defeated him. But even if the two of you joined forces, I could still hold on for a while. Lancer added arrogantly. No, you misunderstood me. Saber shook her head and said softly, if Dustless and I joined forces, it would go against the spirit of the Knight's way. If the two of us really joined forces, you wouldn't be able to resist. That guy could even kill you alone. Don't you see? Dustless has been teasing that gold sparkle. Ah. Lancer fell silent and looked at the miserable Gilgamesh. This guy was simply the synonym of tragedy. After being beaten and humiliated by Dustless, he lost all his dignity as a heroic spirit. I'm going to kill you. Gilgamesh roared, and the void was filled with countless sword shadows again. The golden vortex kept flashing and sharp swords shot out, all aimed at Dustless's head. It was enough to see the hatred this petty hero king had for Dustless. What a problematic child. Looking at Gilgamesh, whose face was filled with murderous intent, Dustless let out a long sigh. This guy's strength was second to none, but his tolerance was really unflattering. Then, I'll give you an eye for an eye. With a teasing look on his face, Dustless waved his hand, and the sky behind him also flashed with a large halo. The dazzling light made Gilgamesh's mind go into a trance. He carefully experienced the nature of the power. After a while, Gilgamesh opened his mouth wide. His exaggerated appearance was enough to fit an adult's fist. This kind of energy fluctuation is definitely not wrong. How does this bastard know my ability? Gilgamesh glared angrily and his teeth were about to shatter. What's the situation with this Holy Grail war? Who is that guy? He even knows how to use the Hero King's ability? Then what use do I have for Gilgamesh? Damn it. Is the Holy Grail going to be given up to that punk Takemiya Kisi? Not only was Gilgamesh, who was in the middle of a battle, so shocked that his jaw nearly dislocated, even his master, Enosaka Tashimi, was staring at Dustless in shock. Golden light dotted the top of his head, and countless divine weapons slowly poked their heads out. The range was even greater than Gilgamesh's. Imposter, you imposter. Gilgamesh had completely forgotten his appearance as a heroic spirit. He was like a shrew pointing at Dustless, who was using the gate of Babylon, and cursing. His eyes were about to crack and he was about to suffer from internal injuries. Chapter 1682. The veins on Gilgamesh's forehead were bulging. He looked as ferocious as an evil spirit. He felt that his dignity and soul had been trampled on by the despicable guy in front of him. Shoot him through. Gilgamesh, who could not take it anymore, took the lead to attack. Divine weapons fell from the sky like a storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dustless did not show any weakness. He immediately launched a deadly counterattack. The lights that decorated his head were also shot out mercilessly. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew everywhere. There were traces of broken steel everywhere. The divine weapons that were shot out by both parties were damaged. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of relics were shot out consecutively, dazzling everyone. Even Saber and Lancer, as well as the conqueror King Iskandar, were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold. All of them were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Why do these two perverts have so many relics? Is God blind? It's not fair. The hero spirits were cursing in their hearts. It was infuriating to compare oneself to others. Damn it! Compared to Dustless, Gilgamesh was so angry that he was about to jump up. As the ancient king, the hero king, he was an extremely conceited person. Now that he had been humiliated by Dustless, he was infuriated. Bastard, since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The blood-red eyeball shot out a violent aura. A huge light appeared on Gilgamesh's right hand. A strange-looking sword vaguely appeared. Oh no, Gilgamesh is infuriated. In the sealed secret chamber, Yanfeng Kali and Tashiomi Inaka saw the scene and were shocked. The two of them only hoped that Gilgamesh could test Dustless's strength. It would be best if he could force him to use his relic. Who would have thought that Gilgamesh would be the first to lose his cool? As the master, Tashiomi Inaka was naturally unwilling to be the first to release his relic. This idiot Gilgamesh is infuriated. It's impossible to persuade him to come back. Tashiomi Inaka looked at the Crimson Command incantation in his hand and was frustrated. The only way was to activate the command spell to make Gilgamesh retreat. Otherwise, this idiot would definitely fight to the death with Dustless. Even if Gilgamesh took out his noble artifact, it might not be his doing. Staring at Dustless, Yanfeng Chili revealed a confused expression. He still hadn't figured out Dustless's background. What's the reason, Kiri? Tashiomi Enosaka asked calmly. This guy seems to have the same ability as Gilgamesh. If that's the case, the eighth hero spirit is too terrifying. Yanfeng said in a low voice. Are you saying? Tashiomi's expression changed. He understood what Yanfeng Chili was trying to say. He said uncertainly, that shouldn't be possible. Gilgamesh's shouldn't be able to use the eighth hero spirit. This? To be honest, I think there's a need to re-evaluate the eighth hero's strength. Yanfeng Chili glanced at Tashiomi Enosaka when he heard this. Then he stared at the surveillance screen and analyzed. The eighth hero spirit seems to be more familiar with using the king's treasure than Gilgamesh. It's really hard to guess who the imposter is, master. Who knows, it might be Gilgamesh imitating someone else. In short, let's get the hero king to retreat. If this continues, I believe he will be defeated. Tashiomi Enosaka sighed in disappointment. He did not hesitate to activate the command spell to order Gilgamesh to retreat. Is the stray dog retreating? Dustless looked at Gilgamesh, who was suffused with a golden glow. He knew that Tashiomi Enosaka had ordered Golden Shimmer to retreat. If not, with the Hero King's personality, he would definitely fight to the death. Let's end it here. In the future, just you wait. I will definitely not let you off so easily. Gilgamesh warned fiercely. His flushed face finally recovered a little. On a closer look, Gilgamesh's body was black all over. His armor was covered in black smoke. The funniest thing was that Gilgamesh's hair had also disappeared. He had become a bona fide bald head, all thanks to Dustless. Darn Tashiomi Enosaka. You want to use a laughable title like Your Majesty to appease my anger? Do you think this king is a 3-year-old child? Hero King Gilgamesh was secretly enraged. He vented all his anger on Tashiomi Enosaka. He had appeared to establish his might, but who knew that he would become a stepping stone for Dustless to rise to fame? Then what do you plan on doing? Conquest King. Gilgamesh fled in a sorry state, leaving behind Hero King Iskandar and his master, Wilbur Velvet. Seeing Dustless look at him, the punk's face was as white as a sheet of paper. Seriously, it looks like my plan of roping you in as my subordinates has failed. Conquest King Iskandar's coarse face revealed a look of regret. How could such an extraordinary expert lower his head to be his lackey? Farewell. By the way, I'm determined to obtain the Holy Grail. The Conquest King rode the divine might wheel and left. Dustless did not plan on pursuing him. This time they were just getting to know each other. The next time they met, it would be a merciless fight to the death. After all, there was only one holy grail. He had to eliminate all them satyr and their heroic spirits. Why am I the only one left after all this fighting? Lancer, who was in an intense battle with Saber, cursed. He was certain that if Saber and Dustless joined forces, he would definitely be torn to pieces. Chapter 1683. Lancer wanted to cry but had no tears. In his heart, he cursed the hero King Gilgamesh and the conqueror King Iskandar who ran away. These two bastards were shameless. Seeing that the opponent was strong, they turned around and retreated. Was this what a hero would do? Especially to the hero King Gilgamesh who was beaten up like a dog. There's a flaw. Boom boom boom. Saber seemed to have noticed the ripples in Lancer's heart. She held the sword with both hands and increased her strength by several levels. She launched a fierce and powerful attack, suppressing Lancer and making it difficult for him to fight back. Damn it. Lancer, who was being beaten back, cursed. He did not expect Saber to have such a sharp eye. Even in such a short moment, she realized that his heart was in a mess. Clang 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 clang. The loud roars continued, and the volcanoes created by the collision of the weapons kept flashing. Lancer was sweating profusely. A moment of mistake would cause him to be suppressed. Bang. The invisible sword coming at him was even more powerful. Saber became braver and braver as she fought. Her attack forced Lancer to retreat. His body even smashed into the wall, leaving a broken dent. Lancer's mouth was also bleeding. Saber, you're too despicable. Lancer, who was not convinced, showed an angry expression. He pointed at Dustless who was standing and shouted, "What's the point of fighting 2 against 1? 2 against 1? Dustless heard him and showed an amused expression. He despised him and said, "Is there something wrong with your eyes? When did I sneak attack you? And do you think you can survive 2 against 1? You?" Lancer opened his mouth wide and realized that he was speechless. It made sense. Dustless did not intervene in the battle from the beginning to the end. He only watched the battle as if nothing had happened and did not intervene. I'm not convinced. Lancer was too lazy to talk nonsense. It was good that Dustless did not intervene, but the psychological pressure he caused could not be ignored. When you were fighting with others, could you still concentrate with an enemy standing behind you? That's it for today. Your head will be taken by me in the future. Saber held the holy sword with both hands. Her gaze was like a torch that made people look at her differently. Ayo 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 ayo. At the same time, a raging roar suddenly came. The 3 of them were startled and rushed towards the source of the roar. Their gazes froze. Is this a berserker? Looking at the pitch-black monster, everyone frowned. That extremely oppressive aura was suffocating. Its aura was extremely evil, and it was as terrifying as a demonic hand that had walked out from hell. Saber, be careful. That guy is coming for you. Dustless stood in front of Saber and reminded her. Coming for me? Saber was stunned. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. There seemed to be no hatred between the heroic spirits. I can only see heroic spirits without hatred, but... Dustless's eyes glowed with wisdom. What if this guy is someone you once knew? This? Saber was confused by Berserker's words. She stared at the furious Berserker as if she was trying to find someone who matched him in her memory. Ayo 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 ayo. King Arthur. Berserker finally let out a series of angry roars. It was very hoarse. His entire body was covered in armor. That voice came from within the armor. No one would doubt that he was a demon disguised as a human. Ayo ayo ayo. There was another series of inhuman roars. Then, Berserker suddenly broke the street lamp and dived towards Dustless and Saber. To be more precise, it was Saber. As for Dustless, he was completely ignored by this guy. Bang bang bang. Berserker's strength was extremely terrifying. Every step he took left a dent in the ground. He rushed in a straight line, leaving a dent in the ground. You're just a vicious dog. You're too arrogant. The demonic voice rang in Berserker's ears. This voice sounded harmless, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. Even the 2 masters who were hiding in the dark, Kenneth Elmaroy and Jiantong Yin, felt a chill in their hearts. It was as if an invisible knife was placed on their necks. Woo woo, even Berserker's body stopped. He hummed twice as if he was telling Dustless not to meddle in other people's business. Immortal spell, however, his protest was completely ignored by Dustless. He only glanced at him coldly. The chakra in his body surged wildly, and a special red halo appeared between his eyebrows. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the same time, There was an extremely coordinated movement from the depths of the void. Immortal spell, bright god gate. Groups of black dots, like a natural disaster, filled everyone's eyes in an instant. This exaggerated formation made people involuntarily think of a natural disaster. What is this? A piece of wood? Lancer looked up at the sky. After seeing what was falling, he immediately took the initiative to distance himself, avoiding close contact with this thing. He had a feeling that a disaster was about to befall him. Damn it, Berserker, this bastard actually didn't listen to my orders. Who told him to provoke that big shot? Jiantong Yayin, who was hiding in the dark, cursed. He did not order Berserker to attack Saber and Dustless. Who knew that this guy would take the initiative to come out and cause trouble? Now he had angered the 8th heroic spirit. Chapter 1684. Jiantong Yayin regretted his decision. If he had known, he would not have brought Berserker, that idiot. It would have been fine if he had just pulled some aggro, but this time he had pulled in 2 extremely powerful heroic spirits, Saber and Dustless. Jiantong Yayin had been watching the battle. He had seen Dustless and Saber's performance. Without any exaggeration, they could be considered the strongest heroic spirit duo. When they were alone, their combat power was invincible. Now that they were in a powerful duo, their strength was on another level. This idiot really doesn't know anything. I wanted him to cause trouble for Toshimi Nagasaka, but this guy. Jiantong Yayin wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Countless crows descended in his heart. He cursed Berserker's 18 generations of ancestors. This guy's ability to attract aggro was definitely top-notch. We have no chance of winning. Let's just retreat. Jiantong Yayin glanced at the falling bright god gate. Jiantong Yayin looked at it with lingering fear, and then he dragged his exhausted body and retreated. Jiantong Yayin was not a scumbag. He was only able to become a master because of his father. Boom boom boom. The sky full of redwood fell. Berserker extended his speed to the limit, but the area covered by the bright god gate was too wide. There was no way to escape. He was instantly crushed. Boom 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 boom. Ka 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 ka. A sea of redwood fell on Berserker's body. His sturdy armor was all smashed, and his entire body was exposed to the air. This is a good chance. Saber's beautiful eyes flashed with passion. When she saw Berserker's armor crumble, she swung Excalibur in her hand. She was about to shatter the heavy armor on Berserker's face. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, good things did not last long. Just as the mask was about to shatter, Berserker's body suddenly turned into mist. He turned into a terrifying black shadow and slowly disappeared. Don't even think about escaping. Saber saw this and groaned. Just as she was about to chase, Dustless stopped her. It's useless, Saber. This guy's master ordered us to retreat. We can't catch him. Grabbing Saber's shoulder, Dustless smiled and said, and this guy's enemy isn't just us. The one who should be having a headache is Toshimi Inaka. You. Saber turned her head and looked straight into Dustless's eyes. Her beautiful face was filled with hesitation as she asked in confusion, sometimes I wonder if you are really a heroic spirit. That's not important. In short, I'm a heroic spirit and your ally. Dustless scratched his head and answered nonchalantly. His actions and the knowledge he had accumulated far surpassed that of the so-called heroic spirits. Let's retreat, Alice. Phil is scared to death. Looking at the dazed Alice Phil not far away, Dustless slowly walked over. She was quite shocked by the bright god gate that filled the entire street. In terms of scale, it was simply too shocking. At this moment, in another direction. Such a large-scale attack, this should be his true treasured artifact. Toshimi Inaka and Yenfeng Kaylee were in a daze as they observed the red forest through a special camera. The boundless numbers made their hands cramp as they were unable to determine the exact number. In a flash, it was the next morning. Yesterday's battle had left a shadow in the hearts of many heroic spirits and Satyr, especially Hero King Gilgamesh. He did not sleep the entire night as his mind was filled with Dustless's arrogant figure. There was nothing he could do about it. His domineering face had Dustless's footprints on it. It could only be said that it was an unlucky year. In the castle of the Ainsbaron family in Dongmu City, Takemiya Kissy and Takeo Kuyu had also rushed back from the distant Pacific Ocean. The former's face was filled with fatigue and his eyes were empty. In the vast Pacific Ocean, Takemiya Kissy had been chased by groups of sharks for several hours. Not bad, your performance was very good. In Takemiya Kissy's bedroom, after hearing about yesterday's battle, his listless and dispirited spirit was finally lifted. He revealed a rare smile, but it looked forced. It's just a pity that we didn't get rid of one of them. If Kissy was around, he would definitely be able to assassinate the enemy's master instead of flaunting his prowess and offending all the heroic spirits. Takeo Kuyu stared coldly at Dustless. She did not hide her dissatisfaction. This bastard had left her lover in the sea to be chased by sharks. Takemiya Kissy had been cheated badly. Satyr, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Dustless is not wrong. There is no need for us to assassinate the enemy in such a despicable manner. With Dustless's and my abilities, we can completely wipe out the enemy's servant. It did not matter if Dustless was silent, but Saber immediately stood up to argue. She believed in the spirit of chivalry and scoffed at Takemiya Kissy's despicable methods. She despised them and even looked down on them. Saber is quite righteous. He stared at the righteous Saber with interest. He did not expect her to defend him like this. As for Takeo Kuyu, Dustless glanced at her and laughed disdainfully in his heart. When I bring Alice and Phil to catch the adulterers, I hope you can still cooperate with each other like this. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a violent tremor resounded through the sky. A low and dirty sound suddenly resounded through the entire castle of the Einsbaron family. Chapter 1685. Jean d'Arc, my Jean d'Arc, come out and see me, I am Gilles de Lays. After hundreds of years we finally meet. A heart-wrenching voice resounded through the sky. Looking through the window they saw a hideous, strangely dressed, devil-like figure appeared outside the castle of the Arensberg family. Is this guy Castor? Saber unexpectedly frowned. She didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. He even dared to take the initiative to attack them. His behavior was not stupid but arrogant. After all, there were two heroes here, Dustless and Saber, but Castor was alone. It seems that he is alone and he can't wait to die? Wei Gong Kisi looked contemplative, then his gray-brown eyes swept around, staring at the large forest in front of him. He seemed to be looking for Castor's accomplice. No, it's a miracle that this guy can come to us now. I thought he would come to us last night. Dustless smiled meaningfully. Castor is a serious, infatuated seed. His obsession with love is admirable, but this time, it's a pity that he is confessing his love to the wrong person. By the way, who is Jean d'Arc? We don't have such a person here. Wei Gong Kisi asked inexplicably. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Maybe someone else is framing us, trying to use us to fight Castor. That's a reasonable analysis. Wei Gong Kisi's lover Q Mamie nodded. The relationship between these two guys is too good. If I kill Wei Gong Kisi, I'm afraid Q Mamie will turn herself into a suicide bomber to kill me. Dustless glanced at the two people who were intimate. He muttered to himself, turning a deaf ear to their conversation. What he did not know was that through the gap of the door, a bright gaze was quietly staring at Wei Gong Kisi. She observed this scene with mixed feelings and disappointment. Her beloved husband was whispering to another woman. As his wife, how could Alice Phil be at ease? The Joan of Arc that guy was talking about. It's funny, but it's actually Saber. Dustless suddenly revealed an answer that made Wei Gong Kisi and Juyu Mommy flabbergasted. Do you think we're idiots? Kuyu Mimi stared at Dustless indignantly. She felt that Dustless was just fooling them. It was ridiculous to say that he had mistaken her for someone else. If it wasn't Dustless talking nonsense, then it was Castor's brain twitching. Joan of Arc, my Joan of Arc, you finally came out to see me. However, the next sentence that Gilles de Rice said made Wei Gong Kisi and Kuyu Mimi furious. Gilles de Rice looked at Saber, who suddenly appeared with an excited and surprised expression as he shouted loudly, Jean d'Arc, my Jean d'Arc? Who would have thought that after so many years, we would have the opportunity to meet again, my Joan of Arc? Gilles de Les exclaimed excitedly. He almost stood up and began to dance. His eyeballs bulged outward as if they might fall out at any moment. That Castor is an idiot. Kuyu Mommy stared at Gilles de Rice speechlessly. That guy was obviously out of his mind. Saber was King Arthur. She had nothing to do with Joan of Arc. The time difference between the two sides was thousands of years. It's a miracle that he can suppress himself until now. Dustless added again, however, this old guy's ability to rush to his death is really perfect. He knows that when the heroic spirits meet, it will be the end of life and death, but he still dares to take the initiative to come here. Diske, it's really hard to guess the thoughts of the infatuated man. Castor doesn't seem to be pretending. He seems to really think that Saber is Joan of Arc. Could it be that they look exactly the same? Wei Gong Kisi secretly guessed. He stared at Castor and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Suddenly there was a flash of light in his mind. He seemed to have thought of something and he showed an excited expression. This guy wouldn't want Saber to fool that super pervert who likes to kill people, right? Catching Wei Gong Qixie's strange expression, Dustless muttered with some uncertainty. With Wei Gong Qixie's character he could really do such a crazy thing. In order to get the Holy Grail, sacrificing a heroic spirit, Wei Gong Qixie didn't think that it was not worthwhile. The so-called heroic spirit was actually like a chess piece. Mommy, come with me to see it. Wei Gong Qixie pulled Kuyu Mommy and couldn't wait to rush to the scene. Seeing the brilliance in his eyes, Dustless guessed that this kid had thought of a sinister idea. Alice Phil, don't you want to see it? In the quiet corridor, Dustless stopped in front of the door of Alice Phil's bedroom. He leaned against the wall and sighed, "This is inevitable. With your identity, you are destined to not live with Wei Gong Qixie forever. It's normal to have an affair. Even one day Wei Gong Qixie will kill you personally to fulfill his wish. However, you are my master, I naturally won't let you get hurt. You can rest assured. This is my fate. From the moment I was born it was destined." Looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window, Alice Phil's face showed a sad smile. As the vessel of the Holy Grail, her final fate was actually destined early on. No matter who the Holy Grail fell on, Alice Phil would inevitably die. Even if Wei Gong Qixie was the final winner, he would not let Alice Phil go. Don't be so pessimistic. There is a phrase called, "Man can conquer nature." If you want, I can help you change your cruel fate and get rid of the shackles of the Ahrensberg family. Dustless yawned tiredly. He looked lazy but his tone was firm. Chapter 1686. Castor, please don't confuse people here, I am not the Joan of Arc you are talking about. Saber looked at Castor's crazy eyes, her nose wrinkled, she was disgusted. No, you are Joan of Arc. Castor shook his head stubbornly and said, Joan of Arc, have you forgotten me? I am Gillis Lesu. Have you forgotten me? Sorry, I don't know you. After searching her memory again, Saber was sure that she didn't know the inexplicable pervert in front of her. Damn it, damn it, damn it. My Joan of Arc doesn't recognize me. Hearing that, Castor was furious. He picked up the child he had caught before and crushed his head to vent his anger. Damn you God. Is this all you're doing? Castor was furious, his face was extremely distorted. He threw the child's body on the ground and smashed it into a bloody foam to vent his anger, and he kept cursing the god with vicious words. You're such a crazy guy. Saber was stunned. She didn't expect that Castor would be so cruel. His actions could be described as the actions of a beast. Any normal hero wouldn't do such a thing to a child. Everyone had dignity and bottom line. Castor's cruel means were so vicious and vicious. If you continue to participate in the Holy Grail War, all the heroes will be insulted by you, so please disappear, Castor. Saber's face turned cold as she rushed toward Castor with Excalibur in her hand, and the sword swept toward Castor's cheek. It's not that easy to kill me. When Castor saw that, he suddenly jumped back a few meters away. His crazy face showed a nostalgic smile, but it still looked so gloomy and terrible, even more frightening than his twisted face just now. If a demon who killed people like Scything Flax smiled at you like the sun, wouldn't you feel disgusted? Even Saber couldn't help but have goosebumps. Evil and crooked path, go. Stop, Saber. At this moment, a stern voice stopped Saber's actions. Turning around, it was Wei Gong Qixie and Juyu Wumi who had rushed over, covered in dust. Master, do you have any questions? Saber looked at the smiling Takashi. She suddenly had a bad premonition. She had to remind him. Master, this guy is an evil demon, even children are not spared, we must get rid of him. After that, Saber stared at Castor again. Looking at his excited face, she knew that he was not a good person. Especially the way he stared at her, it made Saber even more disgusted. Saber, let me deal with this matter. However, Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about Saber's opinion. After all, she was just a heroic spirit. As for the child's corpse on the ground, although Wei Gong Keisai was sad, it was only for a short moment. Sacrifices were being made every day in this world. Only by obtaining the Holy Grail, the universal wishing machine, would all the disasters disappear. Castor, to be honest, this girl is your Joan of Arc. Pointing at Saber, Wei Gong Qixie's words made Castor happy, but Saber stared blankly at Wei Gong Qixie. She suddenly understood Wei Gong Qixie's plan. Master, please stop before you go too far. I can understand your eagerness to get the Holy Grail, but I can't accept such a despicable method. Saber was full of anger and said seriously, I am not Joan of Arc, my real name is Artoria Pendragon, King Arthur of ancient Britain. It doesn't matter, Saber. Takeo came to Saber's side and whispered, Saber, this is all for the Holy Grail, you also want to get it to fulfill your wish, right? So the necessary allies are indispensable. But if I cooperate with Dustless, we can defeat the other Servant. Saber argued she despised Takeshi's despicable method. Not to mention pretending to be Joan of Arc, Saber couldn't help but vomit when she thought of Castor's disgusting face. We have two heroes on our side, but we have an absolute advantage, but you seem to have forgotten one thing, what if the other heroes also learn from us and form an alliance? And we just got the information that Tashiomi Enosaka and Iskandar the Conqueror have come together. The same is true for several other heroes, most of them have signs of forming an alliance with each other. In order to win the final victory, it's okay to use a despicable method, but, a voice full of disdain fell into Takeo and Saber's ears. Dustless was extremely annoyed. Using your wife as a bait to attract the enemy, this method is disgusting. This is all for justice. Takeo loudly refuted. Bullshit justice. Pursing his lips, Wuchen ridiculed even more. His words made Juyu Wumi's face turn red. If it weren't for the difference in strength, she would have beaten Wuchen up to vent her anger. Using Alice Phil as a bait? Saber looked at him blankly, she didn't know what Dustless was talking about. So you still don't know? Glancing at Saber, who didn't know anything, Dustless decisively revealed Takeshi's background and said, the reason why Takeshi let the three of us act alone is actually to attract the other masters to assassinate us. He and Takeo hid in the dark to snipe the other masters. But this guy's plan was destroyed by me. I threw him into the Pacific Ocean to compete with sharks in swimming. Chapter 1687. How could he be so despicable? Saber was furious. It was fine if he was despicable to the enemy, but he was so shameless to his own people. Saber couldn't stand it anymore, especially when he intended to use his wife as bait. How could there be such a despicable person in this world? Master, I will never acknowledge your twisted justice. Saber stared at Wei Gong Kisi's back. This guy was simply shameless. You bastard, are you trying to drive a wedge between us? Juyu Wumi grabbed Wu Chen's collar. When she was about to scold him, she suddenly felt that she was being stared at by a powerful creature. She felt a chill down her spine. It seemed that she might die in the next second. Her whole body was cold. She looked up and saw Dustless with a cold expression. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, making Juyu Mamie's soul tremble. This guy's eyes are so scary. Fear flashed through her eyes. Juyu Mamie quickly let go of Dustless's collar and took the initiative to put some distance between them. No matter what, Dustless was a heroic spirit and she was just a mortal. The difference between them was countless dimensions. Saber, don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. This is all a rumor he made up. Juyu Mamie glared at Dustless fiercely. Anyone could see that this guy was trying to drive a wedge between Saber and Wei Gong Kisi. No, what he said is the truth. At this moment, Wei Gong Kisi frankly admitted, just like what Dustless said, I plan to use Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil to attract the attention of Master and Servant. This guy has guts. Dustless touched his chin and couldn't help but look at Wei Gong Kisi in a new light. But, immediately after, Wei Gong Kisi lowered his voice and shouted, I want to be a partner of justice. Some sacrifices are inevitable. Even if I kill Alice Phil with my own hands one day, I can't do anything about it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as Wei Gong Kisi finished speaking, a black shadow approached him at the speed of sound. Damn scum. How dare you use my Joan of Arc to attract other people's firepower? Go to hell and repent. Bang. Wei Gong Kisi was sent flying with a single punch, and even a few of his teeth were knocked out. His face was slightly sunken in, and there was a clear red fist imprint on it. And the person who attacked Wei Gong Kisi was Castor. Well done. Dustless gave a thumbs up to Castor. It was the first time he thought that the homicidal maniac was so cute. Which side are you on, you bastard? Be clear about your position. Kuyumami's mouth twitched and black lines appeared on her forehead. She loudly reprimanded Dustless. Remember that you are Alice Field's servant, and Alice Field is Wei Gong Kisi's wife. So what? That's their relationship. It has nothing to do with me. Although Saber and I are on the same side, it's hard to be loyal to such a master. It's fine if he plotted against others, but even Saber and I were plotted against by Wei Gong Kisi. Forgive me for being unable to accept this. Pfft. Kuyumami almost vomited blood when she heard that. She pointed at Dustless while trembling. She didn't expect that there was someone in the world who could be shameless to this point. Wei Gong Keisai planned to do this, but before all of this could be implemented, Wei Gong Keisai was thrown into the sea by Dustless to play a swimming competition with the man-eating sharks in the Pacific Ocean. Bang bang bang. Wei Gong Keisai, who was caught by Castor, was beaten violently. The power of a hero's spirit was incomparable. With just a few punches, Wei Gong Keisai's cheeks were badly mutilated. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At that moment, a ray of light rushed toward Castor's side, and a small foot covered with light hit Castor's ferocious face with full force. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. That merciless kick sent Castor flying more than 10 meters away. He glanced at Wu Chen and Wei Gong Qixi fiercely, and then glanced at Saber reluctantly, and then he ran away awkwardly. It's not that Dustless wanted to save Wei Gong Keisai, but after that guy died, Saber would inevitably disappear. This guy is very cruel. I'm afraid that the recent child serial murder case reported in the news was done by him. Wei Gong Keisai stood up with an ugly face. He originally wanted to pull Castor into his camp. If the three Sarvans joined forces, the Holy Grail would be easy to get, but who would have thought that this guy was so unreasonable? He beat him up without saying a word. Not to mention his teeth. In the end, he didn't even get a strand of hair. The most unbearable thing for Wei Gong Keisai was that he was beaten black and blue by Castor. Soon someone will clean up Castor. Dustless stared blankly at the disappearing Castor. He still remembered that in the original work, Enosaka Tashimi joined forces with the church and other masters to suppress Castor, and the final reward was an extra command seal. But in fact it was just a simple trap. Enosaka Tashimi and the church secretly colluded with each other. The essential purpose was to let the other masters fight, and in the end the Hero King would solve the problem. The command seal naturally belonged to Enosaka Tashimi, but the Hero King disdained to deal with Castor, so Castor was killed by Saber. In the end, Enosaka Tashimi didn't even get a strand of hair, but gradually drifted away from the Hero King. Chapter 1688. Forget it, don't worry about that guy, let's deal with the others first. Suddenly Wei Gong Qixi took a puff of his cigarette and said in a deep voice, Kenneth Elmeroy? This guy is our first target. As for Castor, let someone else deal with him. This guy, he actually wants to let Castor go? This time it was Dustless's fault. He still remembered that in the original work the reward for killing Castor was a command seal. Such an advantage was enough to make all the mages crazy, and it was also a good opportunity to hunt other mages. But now Wei Gong Qixi was relieved. Dustless naturally felt strange. Could it be? As if thinking of something, Dustless's eyes fell on Saber's hand. No wonder Wei Gong Qixi didn't care about the swan meat and went to deal with that stinky toad. It turned out to be the reason. Dustless glanced at Saber's left arm. Her wrist was wrapped in a white bandage. There were obvious bloodstains on the white bandage which were very conspicuous. Lancer's noble phantasm Yellow Rose had a rather strange ability. It could cause irreversible damage. After being attacked by this spear, the upper limit of the HP would be reduced. Even if the user used healing magic or regeneration ability, they would only be able to recover to the injured state. The injured state would be maintained until the noble phantasm was destroyed or Lancer was eliminated. In other words, Saber's combat power was greatly reduced. Her ultimate skill, Excalibur, was also blocked by Lancer's noble phantasm. If she didn't kill Lancer, she wouldn't be able to use this ability anymore. But it's necessary to kill Lancer. I'm really sorry, Saber. Dustless walked to Saber and showed an apologetic look. Ah, Saber was stunned and asked, You didn't do anything wrong, why are you apologizing? Alice Phil is my mater, and you hurt yourself to protect her, of course it's my responsibility. Dustless scolded himself for being careless. Back then all he cared about was stepping on Gilgamesh. As for Alice Field, he left her to Saber as if nothing had happened. On one hand he had to fight a strong player like Lancer. On the other hand he had to protect Alice Phil. There was even the extremely despicable assassin who was secretly shooting him. It was normal for Saber to be injured. Don't worry about it. We were allies at that time. On the contrary, you were the one who defeated that golden archer. I should feel proud. That guy made me feel a little threatened. Saber's face revealed a delicate and gentle smile, which warmed his heart. It's best if you can participate. Wei Gong Qixi finally heaved a sigh of relief after looking at Dustless with a gloomy expression. He originally counted on Saber and Takumi Jiyu to deal with Lancer together. As for Dustless, Wei Gong Keisai did not expect him to participate. For some reason, Dustless hated and even viewed him as an enemy. Therefore, in Wei Gong Keisai's plan, there was no script for Dustless to appear. Now that he was willing to take the initiative to participate in this hunt, it was for the best. Damn it, Lancer. Why didn't you join forces with that golden archer and berserker to kill the 8th heroic spirit and those 2 guys, Saber? Bastard, who gave you the confidence to do that? In the luxurious apartment, Kenneth was angrily throwing a tantrum. The handsome man who was kneeling on one knee in front of him was his servant, Lancer. Facing the angry Kenneth Elmeroy, Lancer chose to remain silent. Lord, I will definitely defeat those 2 guys fair and square and help you obtain the Holy Grail. Please believe me. I swear in the name of Delumudo Odina. Lancer swore with a serious face. Unfortunately, his master Kenneth did not buy it. Let me make it clear. This is something that should be done. Do you still need to swear? Are you saying that if you don't swear, you won't help me obtain the Holy Grail? Watch your tone, Lancer. Kenneth snorted coldly. Judging from his tone, he was treating Lancer as a useless tool. Kenneth's eyes became colder and colder. If he could, he would immediately change to a heroic spirit with a more flexible mind. Lancer, this guy was getting more and more unpleasant to the eye. He was extremely annoying. Moreover, his thoughts were too stubborn. It was fine as long as he could obtain the final victory. It did not matter even if he had to use despicable tricks. In Kenneth's eyes, the so-called chivalry spirit was just bullsh*t. You can talk about the chivalry spirit with others, but would others abide by this ridiculous rule with you? It was still a sneak attack. Ah, Lancer, I really pity you. Your master is very similar to that guy Wei Gong Keisai. He would do anything to achieve his goal. A frivolous voice suddenly sounded. Kenneth and Lancer were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the voice at the same time. Outside the window there was actually a figure floating. It's you? That smiling face of Wu Chen's fell into the 2 people's eyes and was extremely asking for a beating. After that, Kenneth and Lancer both exclaimed. Among them, Kenneth's expression was the most interesting. He said furiously, "Impossible, I have set up a lot of..." "Stupid thing, do you think those tricks to trick children will work on heroic spirits? No wonder an idiot like you was killed by Wei Gong Keisai's plot. You're so stupid." Dustless sneered loudly. He snorted at the barrier that Kenneth had set up. Chapter 1689. Dustless was not looking down on Kenneth, but he was too naive. Although a magician was powerful, there was a huge difference between a human and a hero spirit. If the difference could be easily made up, why would a hero spirit be needed in a battle? Is this fella here to provoke me? Kenneth's eyeballs moved quickly as his face turned serious. Dustless was coming at them aggressively. It seemed like they had no other choice but to fight him. Your Majesty, let me have a fight to the death with this guy. Lancer stared at Wu Chen with burning eyes. His eyes were filled with a burning desire to fight. However, Kenneth, who was hesitant, ignored him. Idiot, don't you know there's a saying that there must be something wrong if something is out of the ordinary? Or are all hero spirits so stupid? There must be a trap for him to come to us. Kenneth stared at Lancer angrily and cursed him for being stupid. No, we can't fight him. We must drag it out. This fella must have set a trap for us since he came to us. Wouldn't we be idiots if we step on the landmine without hesitation? Kenneth shook his head decisively after pondering for more than 10 seconds. He smiled proudly as he stared at Dustless. I know what you're planning to do. Saber was stabbed by Lancer and she can't use her arm anymore. Her combat power will be greatly reduced. You came to us in such a hurry because you want to break the curse on Lancer's relic, right? Yo, it's a miracle. You idiot, you're smart. Dustless was actually mocking Kenneth. But you're such a despicable person. Will it work if you reject me? You're so naive that I'll think that you're a kid. You want to force me to fight? Don't even think about it. Kenneth rejected him decisively, ignoring Lancer's burning desire to fight. He was sure that Dustless came to him and there must be a trap for him. He would fall into the trap if he challenged him. It's good that we don't fight. Actually, compared to violent fights, I prefer things that men like to do. Dustless suddenly laughed sinisterly and teased, Oh right, I forgot to tell you just now. Your fiancée, Soren Azirii Sophia, is crying and begging you to marry her. If you refuse, then such a beautiful woman will be mine. You took Sola away? Bastard. Just when did the heroic spirits summoned by the Holy Grail War become so shameless and perverted? Damn bastard. Kenneth trembled as he pointed at Dustless. His vision turned black and he almost passed out from anger. He stared straight at Dustless. The impact of these words was no less than being struck by lightning. As a heroic spirit, you are an out-and-out hero. You even use such a despicable and ugly method. Kenneth, who had regained his senses, was furious. He cursed Dustless in his heart for being so shameless. This bastard kept saying that he and Wei Gong Qixi were despicable, but they even kidnapped a hostage. Who could be more despicable than Dustless? Tsk, this really has nothing to do with me. It was Wei Gong Qixi who did it. Dustless continued to laugh sinisterly and exerted pressure. He even showed an expression that said, "Don't blame me." He also pushed all the responsibility to Wei Gong Qixi. The so-called protagonist was actually used as a scapegoat. Master of Lancer, since you're not going to fight, then I'll retreat. She's called Sola, right? That beautiful woman is still waiting for me to spend the night with her. She's crazy about such a handsome heroic spirit like me. Dustless showed a strange and wretched expression that all men understood. Then he disappeared from Kenneth's sight. Plop. Kenneth, who couldn't take the blow, fainted. The moment he closed his eyes, Sola Nazili Sophia's sobbing face suddenly appeared in his mind, as well as Dustless, who was unscrupulously abusing her. Kenneth immediately stood up and kicked Lancer in annoyance. He roared furiously, "Damn it, why are you still standing here, you idiot? Hurry up and chase after her. Do you want to see another green hat on my head?" Kenneth roared in a deranged manner. He even cursed. Lancer's reaction to battle could be said to be perfect, but when it came to this kind of matter that concerned a man's dignity, he became nervous. Green hat. Lancer was stunned for a moment. Then he came to a realization after thinking about it carefully. He promised solemnly, "My lord, don't worry. Leave Madam's safety to me. Also, you don't have to worry. Madam will definitely not be charmed by that guy. Although he's more handsome than you, I believe that with your charisma, you'll definitely capture Madam's heart." Before leaving, Lancer suddenly advised Kenneth out of kindness. However, the latter only stared at Lancer blankly. That absent-minded gaze was obviously questioning. "You and Dustless are purposely attacking me, right?" Ka. Lancer stabbed the transparent tempered glass with his spear and looked at Dustless's disappearing figure from afar. He decisively gave chase at full speed. "You're quite fast. You've caught up in such a short time?" Dustless turned his head and stared at the black figure that was gradually closing in on him. His cheeks no longer had the frivolous look from before. Instead, it was replaced by endless coldness. Damn that guy. Wei Gong Qixi doesn't deserve to be a magician. He even used such disgusting methods. I must personally chop him into 8 pieces to vent my anger. Kenneth clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he growled. He was really disgusted by Dustless. He pushed all the blame onto Wei Gong Qixi. Chapter 1690. Kenneth walked out of the apartment in a huff. He couldn't control the flames in his heart as he stood in the hallway. His spittle flew everywhere as he cursed Wei Gong Qixi for being despicable and shameless. He even cursed his 18 generations of ancestors. As a magician, he actually kidnapped someone else's fiancée to blackmail them. He was too shameless. What nonsense is this guy spouting? Kidnap his fiancée? Qixi, have you done such a thing before? Why didn't I know about it? In the underground parking lot, Wei Gong Qixi and Takeo Juyu were speechless as they were setting up the bombs. They had installed invisible listening devices in the entire apartment. Kenneth's cursing and scolding all fell into the ears of Wei Gong Qixi and Takeo Juyu. God knows what he's talking about. Especially Wei Gong Qixi, his face was almost the color of a pig's liver. He really wanted to grab Kenneth and beat him up, then ask him when he kidnapped his fiancée. This was completely unreasonable. Don't worry about such trivial matters. Our plan seems to have been superfluous. Dustless has already forced Kenneth out. He has set up all kinds of barriers and traps in this building. We will be at a disadvantage if we fight here. Let's go to Dustless' place and work together with him to get rid of Kenneth and Lancer. Wei Gong Qixi lit a cigarette and took a leisurely puff before saying, "Let's go to Dustless' place. Kenneth is probably rushing there as well." Under the black night sky, in an abandoned warehouse, it was as terrifying as hell. Sharp screams could be heard from time to time, and blurry ghostly shadows were reflected on the walls. Even breathing was several times more difficult than usual. "Don't kill me." Kenneth's fiancée, Sora, looked at the approaching figure in fear. Fear appeared on her delicate face. "That will depend on how you please me." The tone of boredom spread throughout the deathly silent room. Dustless sat on the chair with a lazy expression and looked at Sora, who was hiding in the corner. He realized that Lancer would still need a while to rush over. He stared at Sora's scared face and couldn't help but tease her. 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. A strong gravitational force erupted from his palm, and Sola's body floated over uncontrollably. It's a long night. Don't you think you need some entertainment to pass the time? Dustless grabbed Sola's throat and asked evilly. As long as you don't kill me, I'll agree to any of your conditions. Sola looked at Dustless with a begging expression. Really? That's for the best. Dustless pointed to his left and right legs. He closed his eyes and said, Massage my legs. If I'm satisfied, you can leave here safely. I understand. Sora nodded obediently before kneeling on the ground and massaging Dustless's legs rhythmically with her soft hands. Bang bang bang. Poochie. 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 After a few loud gunshots, Sola stopped moving and fell to the ground. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sola. Her body was covered in blood and flesh. Her abdomen was also badly mutilated, and the finger-sized wound was clearly visible. A heroic spirit really knows how to enjoy life. Two silhouettes walked out from the dark corner. Looking sideways, it was Wei Gong Kisi, who was wearing black clothes, and his assistant Takeo Juyu. She's a scourge. Wei Gong Kisi glanced at Sola, who was unwilling to die, and said expressionlessly, If you want to resent someone, you can only resent yourself for being Kenneth's fiancé. Do you think you can fool me with that ridiculous trick of yours? Wei Gong Kisi. Lifting his eyelids, Dustless stared at Wei Gong Kisi's cold face and sneered, Even if she wasn't Kenneth's fiancé, you still wouldn't let her go. For a person who was distorted by the so-called righteous companions, he wouldn't care how many people were sacrificed in order to achieve his goal. Anyway, in Wei Gong Kisi's eyes, these were necessary sacrifices. Sola. At the same time, a sorrowful cry sounded. Looking at the direction where the sound came from, it was Lancer and Kenneth. Damned Wei Gong Kisi, Sola didn't participate in this war. Why did you do this to her? Kenneth asked with red eyes, looking like a gambler who had lost everything. Don't think that I don't know. Although you have signed a contract with Lancer, the magic that sustains Lackner is provided by this woman. She can only blame herself for this. Looking at Kenneth's eyes that were filled with hatred, Wei Gong Kisi answered frankly. Lackner, I'll leave that heroic spirit to you. Get rid of these eyesores for me. Kenneth roared crazily. Dustless left Lackner to him and he pounced on Wei Gong Kisi. He couldn't wait to die together with him. I will definitely complete your mission, Lord. Lancer also stared at Wu Chen in an unfriendly manner. A shocking viciousness occasionally flashed across his eyes. Bring it on, Lancer. This is your last performance. Try your best to dance. Don't disappoint me. Dustless, who was sitting on the chair, smiled. He supported his chin with his right hand and looked at Lancer with an expectant expression. As you wish. Lancer's gaze froze and he stared at Dustless for a while. Then he turned into a straight black shadow and charged over. Meanwhile, Wei Gong Kisi and Kenneth were entangled in a fight. Chapter 1691. The dense cold light was coming at him at an extremely fast speed. Within a few seconds, Lancer, who was wielding his relic, had stabbed hundreds of times. Unfortunately, Dustless seemed to be omniscient as he was able to avoid the fatal attacks every time. God is really ruthless. Dustless took the initiative to communicate with Lancer as his body floated backward. Don't talk nonsense. Just bring it on. Lancer's eyes were as deep as the abyss as he held the crimson spear in his hand. Nonsense? Don't you think fate is cruel? God is really cruel and heartless to let the perfect me meet you who is full of flaws. Dustless sighed with extreme narcissism and looked at Lancer with eyes full of pity. You're too much. Hearing this, Lancer waved the spear in his hand again. The sharp tip of the spear pounced toward Dustless's head. Elemental transformation. Dustless's body was covered in a bright golden light as he did not hesitate to use his best skill. Pfft. The spear fiercely pierced through Wu Chen's head, penetrating between his eyebrows. However, the strange thing was that there was no blood flowing out of the wound. Moreover, the feeling was extremely strange. It gave people the feeling that they had hit the air. What kind of hero spirit is this guy? Lancer quickly pulled out the relic that was pierced through Dustless's head. In an instant, the wound was healed at the speed of light. It seemed like nothing had happened at all. He stared at Dustless cautiously. His bottomless eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. Nature's attraction. He grabbed the air and a strong gravitational force exploded. An invisible force distorted the surrounding environment. Wherever the gravitational force reached, the laws of physics would lose their effect and everything would float. Lancer was the same. Get over here. With a loud shout, the chakra in Dustless's body increased the output by a few times. Lancer, who was initially struggling, suddenly lost control of his body. You're courting death. A ferocious look appeared on Lancer's face. He simply stopped resisting and used the inertia of gravity to lunge at Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Lancer waved his spear with all his might, and the cold light scattered. It looked like Dustless's head was going to be pierced into a beehive. Lancer's idea was extremely crafty. There was no way to escape. No matter which direction he dodged in, he would be torn apart by the cold light. Die. Lancer seemed to have seen through Dustless's miserable death and revealed a victorious smile. Bang bang bang. At the same time, a majestic repulsive force suddenly broke out of his body. Lancer, who was caught off guard, was also affected. His proud face instantly turned tragic. Shinra Tensei. Lancer's body was sent flying by the super-strong repulsive force. Ka. The hard wall was cracked by him and there was even a dent in it. Lancer's mouth was stained with fresh blood. This guy can actually control gravity and repulsive force at the same time. Lancer wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was in severe pain as if he was being pricked by needles. He had to gasp for breath just to move his body slightly. It was extremely strenuous. If an ordinary person was hit, they would have been turned into a bloody pulp. TSK, your body is very strong. His eyes moved around Lancer. The bones in this guy's body were faintly showing signs of falling apart. It could be said that it was a miracle that he could still stand up. You're still far from defeating me. After taking a breath of cold air, the pain in Lancer's body eased a little. He stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. There was no sign of discouragement on his handsome face. I really don't understand people like you. You know that the difference in strength is like heaven and earth, but you still refuse to give up in the end. A tenacious spirit like perseverance can't make up for the difference in strength. Dustless shook his head to express his confusion. At the same time, a blue light appeared on his fingertips. Void flash. Boom, boom, boom. The energy ball was flicked out by Dustless's finger and instantly annihilated Lancer. There was a violent explosion. Lancer did not even have the time to scream before he was eroded by the high-density energy ball. Plop. Lancer lay in the crater, his entire body charred beyond recognition. The high temperature from the void flash explosion had burned him to the point where he didn't even look like a human anymore. He was still panting, but his consciousness had already fainted. Let me give you the final blow. Looking at Lancer, who was howling in pain, a big shiny sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The light that was reflected was accompanied by a scorching attack. It could easily burn the skin of a human with just a touch. Damn trash, Lancer, this useless trash. It's fine if you can't help me at this time, but you actually want me to help you out. Useless trash. On the other side, Kenneth cursed fiercely. He did not expect Lancer to be so useless. After being beaten up by Dustless, he was coldly suppressed without even having the strength to retaliate. Get lost. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Kenneth suddenly got rid of Wei Gong Kisi and turned to Juyu Mami, who had the weakest strength. He quickly grabbed her and subdued her in a flash. That perverted heroic spirit, if you don't want this guy to die, quickly stay away from Lancer. Kenneth shouted at Dustless. He did not want to lose, nor did he want to withdraw from this Holy Grail war in advance. If Lancer died, it would mean that everything was over. Kenneth did not want to leave in grief. Chapter 1692. Staring at Dustless with a ferocious look, Kenneth glared back with a stern expression. However, Kenneth sadly discovered that although he was angry, the consequences weren't serious at all. Dustless stepped on Lancer's body and looked at him frivolously. Miss Wumi, you should be very happy to die for justice, right? Dustless stared at the pale-faced Juyu Wumi and sent Kenneth to hell with one sentence. Weigong Jishi's expression changed when he heard that. His eyes flickered and no one knew what he was thinking. He remained silent. Ha! Kenneth was hit hard by Dustless's words and said angrily, You bastard, this is your master's mistress. Can you bear the consequences of her death? No. Shaking his finger a few times, Dustless smiled indifferently and said, I think Miss Wumi will be very willing to sacrifice herself. Juyu Wumi glared at Dustless and looked at him angrily. She stuttered for a moment and didn't know how to answer. If she could live, who would choose to die? Moreover, Jianghu Wumi still hoped that after Alice Phil disappeared, she would become the official mistress and live the fairy tale life of her dreams. It seems like you don't want to. Kenneth heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that. Joy appeared on his face. He was really afraid that Jianghu Wumi would say something like, "I'm not afraid of death. I must kill Lancer," or something like that. Dustless, kill Lancer. At this moment, Weigong Jishi ordered with a cold face. Are you crazy? This guy is your secret lover. Are you going to ignore her life and death now? Kenneth shouted in disbelief. He must have investigated Weigong Jishi's matter clearly. The secret relationship between Jianghu Wumi and Weigong Jishi naturally couldn't escape Kenneth's eyes. Jishi? Jianghu Wumi lowered her head with a complicated expression. Her eyes were filled with crystal tears. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, an unexpected cold light attacked. Dustless was stunned. The moment he turned around, a cold light attacked his heart. Pucci. A blood-red hole appeared where Dustless's heart was. His whole body was pierced through by the cold light. If his heart was destroyed, even a heroic spirit would die. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They all stared at the figure behind Dustless in unison, and an unexpected figure appeared before their eyes. It was Lancer, who was severely exhausted. Lancer actually sneak attacked me. Your knighthood spirit should be very valuable. You shouldn't do such a despicable thing like sneak attack. Dustless stared blankly at Lancer, who had a painful expression. Ha! At this moment, an unusually proud laugh came from Kenneth's mouth. He was beaming with joy. You bunch of idiots. With Lancer's character, he definitely wouldn't do something like a sneak attack. However, pointing at the command incantation on his arm, Kenneth laughed and said, "But if I were to use the Lancer to pretend to be dead and attack you, everything would be different." Master, are you that despicable? Lancer's face was filled with pain. Looking at Kenneth, who was laughing proudly, he did not hide the disgust deep in his eyes. Shut up, you idiot. You've ruined my reputation and now you've caused Sola's death. Do you still dare to blame me, you useless piece of trash servant? Moreover, I let you kill this guy. You should thank me. Kenneth laughed crazily, completely ignoring the knighthood. The masters of the Holy Grail War would not follow this idiotic and ridiculous fallacy. Swish, swish, swish. A straight ray of light cut through the dark and oppressive environment, turning into a sharp lightsaber and went straight for Koni's, who was gloating. Pucci. This ray of light instantly pierced through his abdomen, and a hole the size of a human head appeared. His disgusting laughter also disappeared in an instant. Who did this? Ignoring the piercing pain all over his body, Kenneth looked for the initiator of the sneak attack. The culprit is right in front of you. What are you looking at? A lazy voice was heard. Kenneth immediately followed the voice and skimmed over. To his astonishment, it was Dustless. You should be dead. Your wound has healed? Bullshit. Kenneth looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed in a panic, "That's impossible. I ordered Lancer to destroy your heart." Destroying the heart will kill? That's for ordinary masters and servant. Don't forget, this guy is the 8th heroic spirit that shouldn't have appeared. His way of existence is special and unreasonable. The law that applies to ordinary people naturally doesn't apply to Dustless. Takeo Jiyu coldly glanced at Kenneth, who was stunned. She did not hide her sneer. Damn it. Sensing that his life was fading away, Kenneth was like a mad dog. When he wanted to drag Takeo Jiyu down with him, it was already too late. Bang, bang, bang. A few shots were fired consecutively. Kenneth's head was shot into blood, leaving behind a few huge holes. He and Lancer finally disappeared together forever. With Lancer's death, the curse left on Saber's arm also disappeared. We finally got rid of Lancer. It's a success. Let's go back, Takeo Jiyu. Weigong Kisi showed a rare smile and took the initiative to greet Takeo Jiyu. He wanted to give her a warm hug, but who knew that this guy only nodded coldly. Although they won this war, Weigong Kisi also lost the people's hearts because of it. Chapter 1693. Serves you right. Glancing at the indifferent Jiyu Meimi, Dustless wasn't surprised. Weigong Kisi was someone who could sacrifice others for his own justice, so it was normal for him to be hated. His protagonist aura was also limited. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ignoring Jiyu Meimi and Weigong Kisi, Dustless turned into a flash of light and disappeared from sight. Cough cough, Meimi, I have something to say. Awkwardly coughing twice, Wei Gong Qixi revealed an apologetic expression and cleared his throat. When he was about to apologize, Jiu Meimi's words made him raise his eyebrows. Maybe the so-called justice that I insisted on before was wrong. Just like what Dustless said to Alice Phil a few days ago, creating a world where there is only justice? Our dreams might be too illusory. Jiu Meimi's eyes lit up and her light tone carried a sense of relief. People don't have to bear anything when they are alive. As long as they feel happy, it is enough. The person who can decide their own fate is often themselves. This is what Dustless said. You. Wei Gong Qixi was dumbfounded. Damn, do you need to be so deceptive? How could a heroic spirit's casual words be able to turn his best friend who had followed him for many years? This is simply too deceptive. What kind of charm does that kid have? Wei Gong Qixi's weathered face had some other emotions, jealousy. Don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. He is just a heroic spirit. What is there to listen to the words of a dead person? Meimi, don't be deceived by him. Wei Gong Qixi nervously explained. The young woman in front of him was his spiritual food. If Jiu Meimi betrayed him, just thinking about the consequences made Wei Gong Qixi break out in cold sweat. Ever since Dustless, this jinx, appeared, his former best friend, even his servant, became unreliable. Dongmu City, Ahrensburg family's villa. What should I eat tonight? In the brightly lit luxurious villa, Dustless was rushing to the dining hall. After the big battle, his stomach was grumbling in protest. Saber? Is it just you? Where is my master, Alice Phil? After stepping into the restaurant, Dustless looked around and found that Saber was the only one who hungrily devoured the dazzling array of food. She was so fast that it was shocking. It was hard to imagine that such a petite girl would have an even more terrifying appetite than a burly man who had been starving for more than 10 days. It seems to be in another room. The people from the church have rushed over. It seems that they have a mission for Alice Field. Saber's mouth was covered in grease, and she blushed when she realized that she had lost her composure. A notice from the church? Hearing that, Dustless frowned and asked, if it's the church they can use, familiar demon, to go there. Why did they come here? I can only ask Alice Phil about the specifics. I don't know what they're talking about. But before that, I want to thank you. Saber walked in front of Dustless and smiled sincerely. Then she bowed solemnly. The curse on my arm has disappeared. You killed Lancer, right? No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. We don't owe each other anything from now on. Dustless didn't mind. He had a good impression of Saber. Besides, Saber was injured because of his own carelessness. Ta-ta-ta-ta. At the same time, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Looking up, a flawless face and straight white hair invaded his eyes first. Looking closely, it was Alice Phil. The Church of Holy Light wants us to stop the Holy Grail War immediately and kill Satyr temporarily, Alice Phil said happily. After completing the mission, we'll receive a command charm. What's going to happen can't be stopped. Dustless sighed. Then he asked curiously, I heard that the person who came to inform us is someone from the church. Is it Yen Fengqili? In the previous battle, his assassin was killed. I remember that he applied for the church's protection. It's not Yen Fengqili, but the person who came to inform us is related to him. Alice Phil shook her head and gave an unexpected answer. It's his father Yen Fengqili. I heard from Satyr that he's the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Saber nodded slightly and didn't suspect anything. Then she explained, since it was sent in the name of the church, there shouldn't be any shady dealings behind this mission. I guess all the masters will participate. Even if they can't get the command charm, they don't want the enemy to get it. Supervisor? Are you talking about that old man Yen Fengqili? In fact, he's already in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. Dustless curled his lips and said disdainfully, that old man is in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. As for the supervisor, it's even more ridiculous. Yen Fengqili, the son of Yen Fengqili, is participating in this Holy Grail War. All fairness has become unfairness. Also, Dustless's face fell. He sneered in his heart, that old man has a bunch of command charms. He can give them to whoever he wants. He's a big problem. I might as well kill him. Since the word fairness had lost its meaning, then the supervisor Yen Fengqili had also lost its meaning. In the dead of night, Dustless's clone secretly snuck into the church and secretly killed off Yen Fengqili. Yen Fengqili was present during this, but he couldn't do anything against Dustless. He could only watch helplessly. Chapter 1694. Bang bang bang. There were a few crisp sounds coming from Toshiomi Enosaka's house. Toshiomi Enosaka lost his usual calmness, his face was ferocious, and he even smashed some delicate porcelain in anger. Looking at the fragments all over the ground, even so, the raging flames in Toshiomi Enosaka's eyes were still burning. He still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Yan Fengli was dead. This sudden news hit Toshiomi Enosaka a lot. Yan Fengli was one of his important allies. With a special relationship with the church, he could also cheat, but now, in short, Toshiomi Enosaka was very angry now. Master. An old-fashioned, emotionless voice invaded his ears. Toshiomi Enosaka immediately changed his face. As a noble magician, it was necessary to pay attention to elegance at all times. Kaylee? I am deeply saddened by the death of your father. Toshiomi Enosaka showed a painful and sad look. After all, it was his important ally. It was normal to be sad when he died. But, Toshiomi Enosaka continued, I hope you can continue to maintain the relationship between the church and the Enosaka family, so that it will be good for both of us. I will, master. Yan Fengli still nodded with no expression. In fact, he didn't have any sadness or tears for Yan Fengli's death. Not even a trace of tears. As for the reason, Yan Fengli didn't know. One day later. What, you ordered us to kill Castor? In the villa of the Ahrensberg family, Dustless stared at Kimiko Kissy and Alice Phil. His head was buzzing. He had already killed Yan Feng and Li Zhang, so this boring mission should be over. Is there anything wrong? Kimiko Kissy looked at Dustless's eyes and asked faintly. Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this. He thought to himself, it seems that the people of the church have sealed off the death of Yan Feng Rizhang. It should be Toshimi and Yan Feng Kaylee who did it. These two guys are really shameless. They actually want to get something for nothing. Since Yan Feng Rizhang was dead, the quest reward of killing Satyr and obtaining a command seal was obviously not going to be fulfilled. However, Toshiomi Inaka and Yan Feng Rizhang were still trying to trick everyone into fighting Satyr. What else could it be other than trying to gain something without risking anything? Not only that, the overseer of the Holy Grail War had been killed. This meant that all the illegal activities in the past had become legal. All sorts of crazy methods could be used. Anyway, this time it's going to be a luxurious hunting feast. Dustless and Saber are responsible for dealing with Castor, and I'll secretly snipe the other masters. Wei Gong Kissy's eyes lit up. Since the masters chose to stop the Holy Grail War and temporarily kill Castor, then this mission must gather all the masters. Wei Gong Kissy could also hide in the dark and kill them one by one. Despicable. Saber snorted with dissatisfaction. She was very unhappy with Wei Gong Kissy's behavior. Wumi, come with me to prepare. Wei Gong Kissy completely ignored Saber's complaint and left. Dustless, you also need to prepare a little. Even if we can't get the command seal, we can't let it fall into the hands of others. Looking at Dustless's lazy eyes, Alice Field solemnly reminded him that Castor violated the rules of the Holy Grail War and killed innocent people. This is entirely for his own selfish reasons. His master is also not a good person. Saber, who had a strong sense of justice, hated Castor deeply. She couldn't wait to get rid of him. Not only Castor, but his master is also a pervert. Not only is he not a good person, but that guy also discussed the fun of killing with Castor. Dustless rolled his eyes and said, the combination of Yu Shenglong Jijia and Castor was definitely the most perverted kind. That. Dustless, actually, I have a very puzzling question to ask you. Alice Field stared at Dustless suspiciously and said the doubts in her heart. Sarvant's existence needs its master to provide mana. Why don't you need me to provide mana? This? Dustless stared at Alice Field. He really didn't know how to answer this question. That's because my own mana is extremely large. I don't need the master to provide mana. After being silent for a long time, Dustless made up a somewhat reasonable reason. He was not a real heroic spirit, and he didn't need any mana to fight. The command seal on Alice Field's wrist was just for show. It was wishful thinking to control him. The situation is indeed like what Dustless said. Even if Satyr suddenly dies, as long as the heroic spirit's own mana storage is high, it is not difficult to maintain the body. Saber stepped forward to help. She stared at Dustless in disbelief and exclaimed, you should have consumed a lot of mana in the previous battle. Yet, you can still maintain your physical form without being affected. How ridiculous is your mana storage? That's not the point. Dustless looked at Saber's admiring face and coughed twice embarrassedly. How could he maintain the body forever? It had nothing to do with the mana because Dustless himself was not dead. Naturally he could maintain the body indefinitely. As for the huge amount of mana that Saber said, Dustless didn't even have a trace. Chapter 1695. It was a stinky underground sewer. There was dirty black mud everywhere, the smell was disgusting, it was similar to the rotten smell of animal corpses, and the gloomy environment was like the legendary underworld. Boom boom boom. The ground trembled and many cracks appeared on the solid floor. A huge hole appeared, and the bright sunlight shone in. Those two guys really know how to choose the place. There was a sound wave in the quiet atmosphere, followed by Saber's light voice. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about how they survived here. Dustless touched his chin and looked curious. He sniffed slightly, the rotten smell made it difficult to breathe. That makes sense. Saber nodded. Castor and his master could survive in such a harsh environment. Castor and his master were amazing. But Dustless's right eye changed and a mysterious blue and white eye appeared. He could see through the boundless darkness, and the scene in the distance could be seen at a glance. According to Sesei's information, this seems to be the location of Castor's magic workshop. There should be a big harvest. Saber said with an expectant tone. There is a big harvest, but the result may be the opposite of what you think. Dustless looked at Saber with a deep look, then he shouted, "Fire release, great fireball technique." Boom boom boom. The huge fireball rushed out, and the originally dark and strange environment was instantly lit up, and the shocking scene was also reflected in Saber's eyes. Damn it, how can he do this kind of thing? Castor, that bastard, why didn't his master restrain that crazy guy? Saber clenched her fist and cursed, her voice was trembling. Looking around, there were countless children's corpses. You let Castor's master restrain him? Saber, with all due respect, Yu Sheng Long Jijia's level of perversion is no worse than Castor's. They are very close, just like lovers. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew that both of them were perverted murderers. Ouch. A hoarse roar suddenly rang out, accompanied by a violent tremor. In that instant, the entire Dongmu city trembled slightly. Even though the fluctuations were minuscule, Dustless still managed to catch them. Follow me, Castor is on the sea. Dustless flashed and appeared in front of Saber in the next second. Ignoring her shocked expression, he grabbed her slender waist and leaped into the air. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Saber regained her senses, she found herself in the sky with Dustless. Saber, who was being hugged by Dustless, blushed slightly. Her body temperature was rising rapidly, and her cheeks were burning hot. She clutched the corner of her shirt tightly, looking as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. She looked extremely nervous and awkward. This is the first time I've been carried in the air by someone. Feels pretty good. Saber lowered his head and looked at the entire Dongmu city. The boundless city was in his eyes, and the light gathered into a large area. The scenery was so beautiful that he felt a little infatuated. By the way, which era are you from? Dustless. And your name is very strange. It seems that there is no hero that matches your identity. In addition, there is another important question. Saber stared at the face in front of her seriously and said, some of your abilities don't seem to belong to a hero. No matter what kind of heroic spirit it was, there was one thing that could be confirmed. He had once appeared in the track of history. As for Wu Qin, it was as if he had appeared out of thin air. There was no information to be found, not even the most basic clues. Which era are you from? Actually, I don't know myself. Dustless gave a ridiculous answer, which made Saber roll her eyes. I'm telling the truth. Dustless smiled bitterly. After all, he came from another dimension. Only God knew how many years ago he came from. Ow ow ow. Dustless flew farther and farther, gradually approaching the answer. Purple light surged on the surface of the sea, and the beast's roar was getting closer. In a trance, he could see an extremely exaggerated black shadow. I never expected the two of us to be the last to arrive. Even the Hero King is so diligent. After passing through the layers of light, Dustless and Saber landed at the harbor. They looked at the super monster and frowned at the same time. Humph, you sure know how to put on airs. The two of you are the slowest. An unruly voice sounded from the sky. Dustless and Saber looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. They did not need to look to know that the owner of the voice was the problematic child, Gilgamesh. Lancer doesn't seem to be here. The conqueror king Iskandar rode on the divine might wheel. Although it was not as dazzling as Gilgamesh, it looked quite domineering on the surface. Swoosh 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 swoosh. Looking up, in the sky there was an aircraft with a golden hull inlaid with unknown emeralds flying in the sky. The person who was operating it was the arrogant hero king, Gilgamesh. Lancer and his master were killed. Naturally they won't come. Gilgamesh said indifferently. There was no fluctuation in his tone, as if he was talking about insects. This upstart's temperament hasn't changed. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Everyone received the order to eliminate Castor. Whoever killed Castor first would be the winner and could get a command seal from the church. However, according to Dustless's guess, this must be a lie. Yin Fengli was already dead. Ow ow ow. The giant sea monster screamed crazily. It exposed its saw-like teeth and its countless tentacles that flapped its wings and tried to attack Gilgamesh in the sky. However, the distance was too high, and the sea monster couldn't attack Gilgamesh. Bastard, you want to touch the glory of this king? Go to hell and repent. The void behind Gilgamesh rippled and countless divine weapons flashed. When they were about to attack the sea monster summoned by Castor, there was a sudden change. Ow ow ow. An even more ferocious voice suddenly sounded. A monster wearing black armor and a helmet with red light flashed. He was standing on a fighter jet and had launched 2 missiles while Gilgamesh and the sea demon were fighting. Boom boom boom. The aircraft driven by Gilgamesh suffered heavy damage and splashed a huge fireball, which was particularly spectacular. Tsk, why did the hero king do this? Dustless shook his head when he saw it. He clearly saw that Gilgamesh fell into the black stinky sea. He was afraid that this guy's lungs were about to explode. Chapter 1696. Woo woo woo. The monster's gigantic mouth emitted a hiss as it spewed out a viscous liquid that resembled ink. The unlucky hero king had just crawled out of the water when he was attacked by the mysterious ink. His body stank as it emanated a nauseating stench. Oh, it's really embarrassing. Is it appropriate for the ancient king to fall into such a miserable state? Dustless laughed. Archer, if you can't beat Castor and Berserker, you can kowtow and beg me. Beg me? Hearing Dustless's harsh laughter, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately glared at him and gnashed his teeth. He couldn't wait to swallow Dustless alive. Boom. Suddenly, the disgusting sea monster waved its tentacles and attacked Dustless and others. At the same time they could hear, Jean d'Arc. Damn God. Needless to say, the culprit must be Castor, that perverted monster. Overconfident, and I repeat for the last time, I am not the Jean d'Arc you said. Saber snorted, holding her sword with both hands. Excalibur shot out a huge golden light, and a huge slash emerged. Whoosh. The incoming tentacles collapsed in an instant, destroyed by the huge light. The tentacles that were dancing wildly also stopped. At first glance, everything had returned to its original tranquility. It doesn't seem to be anything special. Saber was full of confidence. Gulp. However, the good times didn't last long. The tentacles that were cut off grew new tentacles again, and they were thicker and bigger than before. This is... Saber frowned slightly, and when she was about to attack with her sword, Dustless stopped her. This is the sea monster summoned by Castor's noble phantasm. The only way to break it is to use a decisive force to defeat it. Otherwise, the sea monster can regenerate infinitely. Infinite regeneration? Saber frowned when she heard this. Castor was unexpectedly difficult to deal with. Infinite regeneration. This was the first time she encountered such a tricky ability. Oh golden glitter, as long as you use EA you can crush this monster. That command seal is also your master, Inaka Tashamori's. Dustless said with a smile. What's wrong with this guy's eyes? Gilgamesh met Dustless's gaze and felt displeased in his heart. He had a feeling that all his secrets had been seen through and seen through. He was fuming with anger. How can this king's supreme artifact be used to deal with this kind of garbage? Don't joke, I won't take back what I threw. Hero King Gilgamesh looked arrogant, and he disdained to attack Castor. It's just a bunch of toys. If you throw them away, so be it. Why do you care? Dustless asked calmly. At the same time, a large amount of light swept out from behind him. The golden halo covered the entire sky, and thousands of divine weapons stood out. Gulp. The heroic spirits and the masters were all shocked, looking at the light above Dustless's head. Looking closely, there were more than thousands of noble artifacts. That damned impostor. Seeing this, Hero King Gilgamesh wanted to cry. He found that the way others looked at him had changed, as if the ability of Gate of Babylon, was stolen by him from Dustless. If this guy really has the same ability as me, then he can definitely use that. Gilgamesh's old face was incomparably gloomy. His own unique move had been played by someone else so skillfully. He felt particularly uncomfortable in his heart. However, the next scene also confirmed Gilgamesh's conjecture. Buzz! Suddenly, a dazzling light swept out of the void, and a strange spiral sword slowly floated out of it. At the moment when the big sword flashed, the void was filled with an indescribable ominous feeling. Even Dustless had not made a move, the sky had already broken. Is this your real noble artifact? Dustless. Saber stared at the ominous blade, and she also felt an unprecedented destructive power and a huge sense of oppression. This strange sword was even more powerful than her Excalibur. Noble artifact? Kind of. The star of creation, Enumalish, has the ability to break the world. Staring at the huge sea monster in the distance, its horrible shadow flashed and kept coming to the shore, intending to destroy the entire Dongmu city. Caster. You and Joan of Arc will meet again in the next life. Glancing at the sea monster, Dustless indifferently waved a huge light. Annihilate him. Boom. The huge slash whistled out, and in an instant, the vast sea was split open, and the slash rushed straight to Satyr. Whoosh. The sharp slash made a horrifying sound as it tore through the air, causing people to feel dizzy. Even the ordinary people who rushed over after hearing the sound were unable to withstand the powerful pressure and had their eardrums shattered. Damn, it's so strong. Castor, who was hiding in the huge sea monster, looked at the light of destruction, and his back was cold, and he quickly controlled countless tentacles to block it. Pucci. However, the dying struggle was useless. The tentacles were crushed by the strong hurricane and turned into a drizzle, powerlessly sprinkling on the sea. Boom. The dazzling slash finally pierced through Satyr, destroying it in one move. Its huge body instantly exploded. Chapter 1697. Boom boom boom. Castor's huge body exploded. It was spectacular. The whole sky was occupied by the fragmented body fragments, slowly falling. It was no different from a fine drizzle. It's that simple? Sarvant, who recovered from the shock, looked at the duo of Dustless and Saber with a speechless face. Of course, the main focus of their attention was still the calm Dustless. Especially when the Hero King was Gilgamesh. When this fellow saw Dustless take out an Ye that was identical to his eyeballs nearly popped out. Hey. Golden Glitter Archer over there, I have something to ask you. Conqueror King Iskandar drove the wheel of divine power to land next to Hero King Gilgamesh and asked, "How did you steal that guy's ability?" "You bastard, get away from this king." Gilgamesh was about to explode when he heard that. Gate of Babylon was his unique ability. Now Dustless could use it inexplicably. Not only that, but he, the real one, was also treated as a fake. In fact, it was not only Ryder who thought so, the rest of the masters and Sarvant had the same idea. When Golden Glitter used Gate of Babylon for the first time, it was destroyed by Berserker, but now Dustless showed the true strength of Gate of Babylon. It was no wonder that everyone was daydreaming. Well, I will find a chance to let you witness the gap between a fake and a real one. Hero King Gilgamesh snorted angrily and left. He was very angry with today's battle. Enosaka's mansion. Kiri, our plan needs to be modified. The 8th hero is very strong. I used to think that Gilgamesh was the strongest, but now it seems that I was wrong. Enosaka Tashimi's face was full of decadence, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. Yes. Judging from the battle just now, Gilgamesh may not be his match. Yenfeng Chili maintained his composure. But only this time he looked at Enosaka Tashimi's eyes. There was a strange light, like a hungry beast. No one knew what he was thinking. Kiri, I have something for you, Pucci. Suddenly Yenfeng Chili attacked. He didn't give Tashimi a chance to finish his words. He used a dagger to end Tashimi's life. There was a visible bloody hole in his heart. Pucci. As if afraid that Tashimi Nagasaka's death wasn't complete enough, Yenfengili gave him another stab. "Why? I treated you so well, and I even wanted to avenge your father. Tell me everything you want to know. Why are you so vicious?" Tashiomi Inaka's lips trembled as he asked. "Avenge my father?" Yenfeng Chili followed and then said expressionlessly, "As expected, master, you don't understand me. My only regret is that I didn't kill my father with my own hands." "Archer and I will finish the mission you didn't finish," Yenfeng Chili said coldly and turned to leave. However, he did not see that in the dark room, a pair of bright eyes were watching this scene in a daze. So that's how it is, Gilgamesh, that bastard betrayed me. Tashimi Nagasaka was unwilling to cry, but Yanfeng Qili turned a deaf ear and left with no expression. Tashimi Nagasaka didn't have much time. We seem to be late. Outside Tashimi Nagasaka's house, Dustless, Saber and Alice Phil looked at the gloomy building. Saber and Alice Phil's delicate eyes wrinkled. They looked at each other and could see the confusion in each other's eyes. The reward for defeating Castor is to find the church. Why do you come to Tashimi Nagasaka's house now? Alice Phil was full of questions. Yanfeng Qili is dead, and his son Yanfeng Qili is colluding with Tashimi Nagasaka. What's wrong with the son's death? Dustless asked flatly. It seems that no one is here. Alice Phil pressed the doorbell, but no one responded for a long time. I smell blood. After a long silence, Saber suddenly interrupted and said, It seems that someone is dead here. Could it be? Dustless heard the words and kicked open the door of Tashimi Nagasaka's house. According to his vague memory, he searched for the trace of Tashimi Nagasaka. Soon the three of them passed through the tunnels and walked to an old door. Woo-woo! Just when they were about to open the door, an unexpected sobbing sound was the first to enter their ears. Let's go in. Dustless and Saber looked at each other. Saber opened the door, and Dustless blocked in front of Alice Phil to prevent any accidents. Pucci. Saber pulled out the sword of Excalibur and easily broke the door. She thought she would meet Servant of Tashimi Nagasaka, but when she saw the blood-red figure, she was stunned. Sure enough, Yanfeng Qili still killed Tashimi Nagasaka and is still in cahoots with Archer. Are the two of them really that compatible? Dustless whispered to himself, and then glanced at Tashimi Nagasaka's body. No, he was still barely breathing, and his heart and another knife wound were temporarily bandaged, but he was not far from death. Akui Nagasaka and Rin Nagasaka? He glanced at the two of them in surprise. Apparently, they helped Tashimi Nagasaka temporarily treat his wound. Strange, I remember that they left Dongwu City. Dustless whispered secretly, his mouth squirmed, and when he was about to speak, Tashimi Nagasaka's old and desperate voice sounded first. Chapter 1698. I'm sorry, Miss Alice Field. It was rude of me to let you see me in such a sorry state. Tashimi Dosaka's tone was very subtle. Due to the distance, Alice Phil could not hear his words clearly. She did not understand what he meant. Master Enosaka, please speak your mind. Alice Field took a few bold steps forward, taking the initiative to approach the dying Tashiomi Enosaka. Dustless and Saber were both here, so she did not have to be afraid of Tashiomi Enosaka's schemes. I would like to entrust the mother and daughter to the care of the Einsbaron family. Tashiomi Enosaka glanced at Kue Enosaka and the teary-eyed Rin Enosaka. He lowered his head in shame, then put on an apologetic expression and blamed himself. Now that things have come to this, I won't blame anyone. I can only blame myself for being blind. It's fine if I die, but I don't want to implicate Kue and Rin. You just realized that you were blind? Wu Chen snorted when he heard that. His face was full of ridicule and disdain. This guy was too self-righteous. He thought that he controlled the master who had calculated everything. That was why he was killed by himself in the end. Watch your tone. I won't allow you to look down on my father. A girl with a ponytail and emerald eyes suddenly appeared in front of Dustless. Her angry eyes locked onto him and she shook her fist threateningly. She looked like she would beat him up if he dared to talk nonsense again. This little girl? Seeing this, Dustless could only roll his eyes. If it was any other heroic spirit who provoked him, he could have beaten them up to vent his anger. But if it was a little girl who was not even 10 years old, Rin, shut up. He's right. I was too complacent in this Holy Grail war, so much so that I neglected the dangerous people around me. Tashiomi Enosaka waved his hand with the last of his strength, then looked at Alice Field with hopeful eyes. The Enosaka family will withdraw from this Holy Grail war. I hope that you can take care of the mother and daughter for me. This? Alice Phil hesitated for a moment when she heard this. Looking at Tashimi's pleading eyes, she couldn't help but feel pity for him. In the end, she gritted her teeth and said, All right, I agree to your choice. If that's the case, then I can die in peace. Hearing this, Tashiomi Enosaka smiled and left the mortal world. In the end, he closed his turbid eyes in satisfaction. What a farce. However, Tashiomi Enosaka still has some conscience. At least he's better than the scum who used his wife as bait. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He vaguely understood Toshiomi Inaka's intentions, and his impression of him changed slightly. Nothing was absolute. It was one thing if Yen Feng Chili killed Toshimi, but what if he attacked Rin and Kue Toshimi as well? It wasn't impossible. Yen Feng Chili was a temperamental person. No one knew what he would do. It was normal for Toshimi to leave his family in Alice's care. He could use this opportunity to protect Sang. Moreover, the Toshimi family had already withdrawn from this Holy Grail war. They were no longer a threat to the Ahrensburg family. We won't be able to get the command seal. Yen Feng Chili probably took it all. Let's go back. After a few hours, Dustless and the others finally left the Toshimi family. During this time they held a funeral for Toshimi. Alice Phil also took the initiative to comfort Rin and Kue Toshimi. The orphan and widow were quite pitiful. On a bustling street, the car Dustless and the others were stopped in front of a supermarket. Alice Phil said that she wanted to help Rin and Kue Toshimi buy some basic necessities. Women sure have a lot of things to do. They're always like this. Sitting in the car, Dustless's casual words attracted 3 hostile gazes. He turned around and saw that it was Saber, Rin, and Kue Toshimi. Cough, cough, cough. That was a slip of the tongue. After Wu Qin cursed his bad luck, he immediately apologized. They were living under the same roof. He could offend a strong man, but he definitely couldn't offend a woman. You guys wait here. I'll go see why Alice Phil is so slow. Seriously, it's just buying some necessities. Does she need to take so long? Dustless complained as he got out of the car. Just as he was about to close the door, an unexpected figure grabbed him. A strong man with red skin reached out and grabbed Dustless's shoulder. His rough face was filled with a bold smile. He waved the huge wine barrel in his other hand and laughed. Isn't this the 8th heroic spirit? Let's drink together tonight. I even invited that guy Gold Sparkle. A banquet between kings isn't something that can be casually attended. Do you want to come? This person was Ryder, the Conqueror King Iskandar. His master was Weber Velvet. However, Dustless only glanced at him in boredom and said dispiritedly, "Sorry, I'm just a normal person. I'm not interested in the banquet of kings." Hey, don't reject me so coldly. Even if you're not interested, I remember that your ally Saber is a famous Night King. She should be interested in this kind of thing. Ryder didn't care about Dustless and looked at Saber in the car. Night King, what do you think? Don't you want to discuss the path of kings with other kings? Ryder asked expectantly as he got into the car with his rough face. Sorry, Conqueror King. My attitude towards this kind of thing is the same as Dustless. Saber also shook her head and refused to participate in the banquet of kings. Chapter 1699. Oh, this is really giving me a headache. Seeing that Dustless and Saber were not interested, Ryder could not help but sigh in disappointment. He lowered his head, looking rather disappointed and depressed. Hurry up, Ryder, don't think that everyone is as bored as you. The thin figure behind the broad figure urged impatiently, staring at Dustless fearfully. Ryder's master, Wilbur Velvet, felt a lingering fear as he looked at those dark pupils. The 3 heroic spirits that had died so far were all killed by Dustless. Wilbur Velvet had even secretly given Dustless the nickname Heroic Spirit Killer. Sorry for the long wait, it took a while. Alice Field rushed out of the supermarket with an apologetic smile on her face. When I saw the dazzling products, I was a little... Ryder? Are you here to declare war? Seeing Ryder and his master, Alice Field frowned in doubt. I was thinking too much, I'll take my leave. Ryder gave Alice Field and Dustless a reassuring look, then left with his master out of extreme boredom. That's strange. After returning to the car, Dustless stared at Ryder's back that had not yet disappeared, muttering suspiciously. Is there something wrong? I don't think Ryder and his master have any intention of attacking us, and Ryder doesn't look like a heroic spirit that would attack others. Saber, who was in charge of driving, replied. She had done a lot of research on Ryder's personality. That's not what I meant. Dustless shook his head, then explained softly, what I meant was, it's strange that Ryder gave up so easily. In my impression, Ryder would definitely pester us to participate in the king's feast. But I'm curious that you rejected it. You and I are different, you were once the king of ancient Britain, your identity is very suitable to participate. Saber's eyes flashed with a complicated sense of desolation, but she did not explain further. In the blink of an eye it was nighttime. Ha! Bold laughter resounded through the sky. Looking at the rough man in front of him, Wu Qin sighed. Sure enough, he fixed his eyes and saw that this guy was Ryder. Well, I'm really sorry. Wilbur Velvet hurriedly bowed and apologized. He had tried his best to stop Ryder, but the guy was determined and insisted on drinking with Dustless and Saber. Ryder, you bastard. Saber frowned as she stared at the big guy in front of her and warned, your actions can be seen as an invasion. We can forcibly expel you. Hee, since I'm here, you won't be able to chase me away, right? As the saying goes, those who have nothing to lose are not afraid of those who wear shoes. At this moment, Ryder placed the wine barrel on the ground and said with a look of indifference, as the Night King, you shouldn't be so petty. Forget it, sit down. Dustless shook his head helplessly and gestured for the two to sit down. At the same time, he glanced at the dark corner on the left. Hero King, are you a street rat? Hiding at home every time, are you afraid of dying in the light? Dustless's sudden sarcasm stunned Saber and Ryder. They looked at the east corner at the same time. A golden light flashed and a man in golden armor appeared. Your eloquence is stronger than your strength. The arrogant archer Hero King appeared and said proudly, the protagonist is usually the last to appear. This is common sense. The minions that come out early are the first to die. So in this war, this king is destined to have the last laugh. Archer, Lunatic's personality hasn't changed at all. Do you still think you can get the Holy Grail? To be honest, I'm already a little desperate. Taking a glance at Dustless, Ryder sighed and immediately poured himself a glass of wine. At the same time, he also handed a glass of wine to Dustless and Saber. Compared to the arrogant archer Hero King, Ryder knew his strength better. Bastard, pay attention to your words. The Hero King archer swept an unfriendly glance at Ryder and immediately stared at Dustless and Saber with his torch-like eyes. He announced loudly, it's not about obtaining the Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail was originally this king's. It's just returning it to its rightful owner. Another thought is that this king wants to teach thieves like you who attempted to steal my treasures a lesson. This guy's head must have been crushed by a door. Dustless scanned the Hero King archer with a look of pity. Immediately, he began drinking to drown his sorrows. After all, they were all kings. He did not have such a status, so it was inappropriate for him to interrupt. He just needed to stay out of it. Archer, the next time you talk big, you'd better build an iron tongue. Saber mocked the Hero King coldly. This guy didn't even blush when he lied. It was obvious that he was an expert. Iron tongue? Hearing this, Archer frowned and pursed his lips. Then he asked in puzzlement, this king's tongue isn't wrong. Why do I need an iron tongue? You don't even know this? Dustless exposed him with a smile. The next time you talk big, you won't sprain your tongue. After all, it's made of iron. With that said, everyone roared with laughter, ignoring the livid Hero King. Chapter 1700. When the Hero King heard the duo's mockery, his nose nearly went crooked from anger. As everyone knew, he had a bad temper to begin with. He never knew what it meant to endure humiliation. He had always believed that the heavens were number one and he was number two. No, he had always believed that the heavens were number two and that he was number one. Now that he was being humiliated and ridiculed in public by Dustless, he gritted his teeth in anger as his facial expression twitched. Unlucky. The Hero King cursed silently as he picked up the wine barrel and began drinking. Gulp, gulp. Who knew that the Hero King would spit it all out after taking 2 mouthfuls? He cursed at Ryder, preposterous. Giving the king such trashy wine to drink is blasphemy. Trashy? Blasphemy? Ryder was secretly rendered speechless as he retorted, this is already the best wine on the market. A bastard who has never seen the world. I knew you would say that. The Hero King curled his lips in disdain and immediately threw an exquisite golden wine cup to Dustless and company. This king had once collected some of the treasures on the ground. The best things in the world are all mine. Wine is no exception. Don't you have such an ability as well? Saber leaned close to Dustless's ear and whispered into it. She said strangely, this fellow can't be your biological brother, right? Both of you have the same ability, ha. Dustless's drunkenness disappeared from Saber's question. He looked at Golden Twinkle, who had an explosive expression and was rendered speechless. If he was my biological brother, I would have long been killed. According to Archer's personality, what you say makes sense. Saber, who was taken aback, nodded resolutely. Phew, that feels great. After Ryder finished drinking, he used his hazy drunkenness to say loudly, after obtaining the Holy Grail, my wish is to be reborn and conquer this world again. I want Iskandar's name to spread to every corner of the world. If that's the case, then the Holy Grail is destined to pass you by, Conquest King. Swirling the red liquid in the wine cup, Dustless explained, your name has already spread throughout the world. No, that's history. I want to rule the world again. Ryder shook his head like a rattle drum. By the way, Dustless, what's your wish? Saber blinked her eyes and asked with a hint of anticipation in her tone. Saber wasn't the only one who was curious. Even the Conquest King and Hero King had put down the alcohol they had brought to their mouths. Their eyes circled around Dustless. My wish, how? Dustless thought for a moment, and to his dismay, he realized that he did not have a single decent wish at the moment. Even if he had a wish, it would be impossible for him to fulfill it with the power of the Holy Grail. I don't have any wishes. After a while, Dustless gave an answer that left everyone speechless. I don't have any wishes either. The Hero King immediately added, all the treasures in the world belong to this king. That so-called Holy Grail is no exception. Participating in this boring war is only to teach you lawbreakers, thieves who wish to steal my Holy Grail, a lesson. You and Archer seem to have the same ability. Is there such a thing as the Holy Grail? Saber asked Dustless. No. After thinking about it carefully, Dustless replied decisively. Ha ha ha. The Hero King smiled proudly and pointed to Dustless and said loudly, there is definitely no fake, so this king is the real one. In the past few days the Hero King had been gloomy. Since Dustless used the treasure of the king to defeat Castor, all the masters and heroic spirits regarded him as a fake. No, you misunderstood me. Glancing faintly at the Hero King, Dustless suddenly said, my treasure of the king are all killing weapons. Even if I have something like the Holy Grail, I don't remember it. Who knows, I might have even thrown it away. I'm a person who doesn't like to collect worthless items that take up a lot of space. This time it was Saber and Ryder's turn to be speechless. Both of them were local tyrants. Get the Holy Grail, I will change the history of the destruction of ancient Britain. Saber's eyes shone with a cold light, and her eyes were as dazzling as diamonds. Who would have thought that as soon as these words fell, it immediately attracted the ridicule of the Hero King and Ryder. Ryder, did you hear that? This naive little girl actually did such a thing. The Hero King laughed as if he heard the funniest joke in the world. If your dream is just like this, then I will never recognize you as the king. Although Ryder was not as exaggerated as the Hero King, he also shook his head and held a negative attitude. What's wrong with saving your own country? Don't you two have any regrets about the destruction of the country you loyally protect? Saber asked angrily, feeling that her dignity was trampled on. Never regret. The Hero King and Ryder were determined, and their resolute tone didn't seem like they were lying or deliberately attacking Saber. The king acknowledges it, the king allows it. The king carries the entire world. The king is the absolute controller, a unique existence. Wanting me to die for others is simply wishful thinking. The Hero King said loudly, while the Conquest King nodded thoughtfully. It dealt a blow to Saber as she involuntarily looked at the silent Dustless with her despondent eyes. To be honest, I have never been a king, nor do I understand what the so-called king's way is. Looking into Saber's eyes, Dustless said the answer he once got. I have lived for so many years and I have concluded my own principles. There is no right or wrong in this world. Just do as your heart wishes. Walk your own path and let others say what they want. Everything is fine as long as you have a clear conscience. Chapter 1701. Walk your own path. Let others talk about it. Upon hearing Dustless's words, the Hero King and Conquest King simultaneously figured out the meaning behind it. They nodded in unison as their eyes emitted a bright glow. Be it a king or a commoner, all they needed to do was follow their hearts. There was no right or wrong. Everything could be decided according to their will. I never expected this inferior impostor to have such a different view of things. Shaking the golden cup in his hand, the Hero King did not hesitate to pour the scarlet liquid into his mouth. That makes sense. There is no right or wrong in this world to begin with. At the end of the day, everyone just has different standpoints. Nodding his head, the Conquest King also accepted Dustless's explanation. Immediately he sighed and said, the onlooker sees things clearly. Perhaps it's precisely because you aren't a king that you can see things more clearly and feel more at ease. What a great wise man. Dustless did not reply when he heard that. He stood up and stretched his back. After loosening his muscles he said, I can't be considered wise. At the end of the day, it's just that I've lived a little longer than all of you. I'm a little tired. I'll head back to wash up and sleep. Goodbye. Just as his voice faded, Dustless did not give them a chance to react. His body gradually lost its texture as it transformed into streams of light that filled the sky like countless fireflies. In an instant, he vanished from the trio's eyes. What an unfathomable fellow. The Hero King and Conquest King were dumbfounded. After carefully sensing the situation, they shook their heads. Despite not having any magic power and having a combat strength close to 5, he was surprisingly powerful. He had beaten all the heroic spirits to a pulp. Currently, all the heroic spirits that had been killed were all Dustless's doing. Thank you, Dustless. Saber's eyes were filled with gratitude as she swept a glance in the direction where Dustless had disappeared. She had been dealt quite a blow by the Hero King and Conquest King, who echoed each other, to the point of hesitation. If not for Dustless lending a helping hand at the critical moment, Saber would have found the confidence to stand on her feet despite it being an insignificant sentence. A bunch of kids who haven't grown up yet. How dare you talk about the ridiculous way of the king in front of me? Should I say that you guys are naive or ignorant? In the brightly lit corridor, even in the dead of night, it was still shining brightly. The corridor was filled with straight murals, giving it an indescribable elegance. In any case, a rich family like Einsbellen didn't lack money. Using a popular saying, I'm a fool with a lot of money. Creak. Just as Dustless pushed open the door of his room and was about to turn on the lights to take a shower, he strangely found that all the chandeliers in the room were on. Not only that, when he walked into the bedroom he saw 2 figures on his bedding. Dustless was immediately dumbfounded. The 2 uninvited guests in the room were not the most bizarre thing. The most bizarre thing was that these 2 figures were not wearing any clothes. Their exquisite and flawless skin was completely exposed to Dustless's sight. Get lost, pervert. The atmosphere was tense for a few seconds before a few pillows were thrown at him. Upon closer inspection, the 2 figures were actually Rin and Osaka and Kue and Osaka. Wait. With a flick of his finger, Ryatsu shredded all the pillows. After taking a closer look at the furnishings in the room, Dustless confirmed that he didn't walk into the wrong room. He shouted angrily, "This is my room without a doubt. The 2 of you are sleeping in my room without a doubt. There's no doubt that the 2 of you are the intruders. How did I become the pervert? Don't you get it? This castle doesn't have any extra rooms for us to use, so your room is being used. Amir Einherjar should feel honored." Rin and Osaka and her mother hid under the bedding with red faces. Dustless was speechless as he looked at the arrogant Rin Tasaka. This bullshit explanation was too far-fetched. The Ahrensberg family was a nouveau riche. The castle was as big as a few football fields. How could there not be a few rooms for people to sleep in? I'm really sorry, Mr. Einherjar. It was Miss Alice Phil who arranged for Rin and me to stay here. If you are dissatisfied, Rin and I can leave. The gentle and virtuous Kue and Osaka explained. That's not necessary. You can sleep here for now. I'll go ask Master if there are any other bedrooms. Good night. Dustless turned around and closed the door. Then he walked towards Alice Phil's room. Unexpectedly, as soon as he opened the door, he saw her arguing with Wei Gong Kisi. Their faces were red and it was obvious that they were both angry. How strange. The 2 of them can argue? Dustless had a strange expression. In his impression, this couple had always been the type that stuck together like honey. It was unprecedented for them to argue. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Take care. Seeing Dustless appear, Wei Gong Kisi left with a gloomy expression. Alice Phil, you too. Dustless stopped himself. After all, this was a matter between the couple. As an outsider, he had no right to interrupt. Do you want to ask about Kue and Rin? I'm sorry, Dustless, but this is something I allowed. Alice Phil explained with a bleak expression. Her bright eyes clearly understood Dustless' intentions. Is that so? Dustless nodded slightly. He couldn't help but ask, then where's my new room? No, there's no new room. I deliberately let you 2 sleep together. Alice Phil shook her head. Then she revealed a meaningful smile. Her face was very pale and her smile looked more like a forced smile. I know why you want to ask, but this matter is very special. I can only wrong you for now. Special. Dustless smiled bitterly. Even if it was special, he couldn't betray his teammate. Even if he had a reason, he couldn't. Chapter 1702. As she looked at the aggrieved Dustless, the resentment on Alice Field's face was completely wiped away, and a wisp of a heartfelt smile flashed on her jade-like face. "What's so funny?" Dustless rolled his eyes and asked. He felt that this girl was gloating. Sigh. Alice Phil frowned and sighed. Her delicate face gradually lost its luster. She said sadly, "Kisi wanted to kill the mother and daughter. I couldn't bear it. So we inevitably quarreled." "Kill the two of them? Are you referring to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka? Kisi seems to be a righteous partner. Is there no reason? He doesn't look like someone who would kill the innocent. Are you mistaken?" Dustless frowned. Although he was ruthless, as long as those people didn't resist and restrain themselves, he could let them go. "Of course there is a reason. Although what Kisi said is reasonable, I have already promised Tashimi and Osaka. If I hurt the two of them again, I can't accept it." "Alice Phil, you didn't do anything wrong." Dustless smiled and encouraged her loudly, "You did the right thing. Remember, you are a human with flesh and blood. You are not a puppet created according to Kisi's plan. There is no need to follow his will. So you agree with my way of doing things?" Alice Phil retracted her sadness and revealed a cheerful smile. "Of course I agree." Dustless smiled and reached out his hand. He added in his heart, "As long as Kisi likes it, no matter if it is right or wrong, I will stand on his opposite side." Alice Phil organized her thoughts and explained, "Miss Wumi, I just received news that Yadong Yayan from the Yadong family is also participating in this Holy Grail War. And the reason is related to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka. The reason why Kisi asked me to kill the two of them secretly was to prevent Yadong Yayan from finding out that Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin are living in our house. Otherwise, Yadong Yayan's berserker will very likely attack us. The enemy will also have an opportunity to take advantage of. Until now, Kisi is still afraid of Yanfeng Qi." "Is that the only reason?" Wei Gong Qisi's words make sense. Dustless nodded in agreement. This reason was barely acceptable. If Jantong Yayan really knew that Kuei and Ling were here, he would definitely lead the berserker army to attack the Einsbaron family. But, changing the topic, Dustless glanced at Alice and Phil suspiciously. "Then they can also live with Saber." "There's no need for me to live with them. Alice, Phil, I also think that the mother and daughter can sleep with me. Don't you trust my ability?" At the same time, Saber grumbled. For some reason, when she heard that Dustless was going to sleep with Ling and Kuei, she felt a little jealous. After all, they were allies in the trenches. It did not feel good to have them taken away from her just like that. Have the Hero King and the Conqueror King left. Noticing Saber's appearance, Dustless instinctively looked out of the window. The place where they were drinking was empty. The Hero King and the Conqueror King seemed to have left. This banquet could be considered the best banquet. If they were to meet again, they would fight to the death. That's a good idea, but it's impossible. Alice Phil's face was filled with worry. She decisively rejected the idea. "That's impossible. You're Qisi's master. What if he uses a command spell on you?" Although the probability of Wei Gong Qisi using a command spell on such a trivial matter was close to zero, nothing was absolute. It was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, Wei Gong Qisi was a person who was difficult to grasp. Moreover, in this Holy Grail War, all of Wei Gong Qisi's command spells remained intact because of Dustless. Until now, he had not used a command spell on Saber. Even if he were to use a command spell on Saber, it would not be a big deal. After all, the Holy Grail War was about to end. "So, I'll be the scapegoat this time?" Dustless glanced at Alice Phil in annoyance. He said in a troubled and depressed tone, "Doesn't that mean that it's useless for me to change rooms? Kuei and Ling will still be with me." "That's what I mean." Alice Phil nodded slightly. She looked at Dustless strangely and said, "You're just a heroic spirit. Why do you have to care so much?" Hey. You're talking as if heroic spirits have no human rights." Dustless made a scary expression. Unexpectedly, Alice Phil did not care. Instead, she made a face at him. She was not afraid of Dustless's threat at all. "I'm destined to be the scapegoat this time." Wuxian looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. It was a sad thing to have such a trouble-making master. "Scapegoat? It's not as serious as you said. At most, I'll let you be a temporary bodyguard." As if she thought of something, Alice Phil's eyes rolled. She looked like a sly fox. "Even though Kuei Dosaka and Tashimi Dosaka have been married for many years and even had 2 children, we were bathing together just now. I know her figure." Cough, cough, cough. Noticing that Alice Phil was getting further and further away from the topic, Wu Qin couldn't help but cough twice to interrupt Alice Phil's speech. He opened his mouth and deliberately changed the topic to Saber. As you can see, the task of protecting Alice Phil will be handed over to you, Saber. Leave it to me. Also, don't do anything out of line. Otherwise, my sacred sword will go berserk. Saber instantly took out the Excalibur. It invisibly emitted an extraordinary aura. It was full of warnings and threats. This guy is deliberately making things difficult for me. Dustless glared at Alice Phil bitterly. He nodded at Saber and left. Chapter 1703. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Alice Phil persuaded Wu Qin for nearly half an hour. Wu Qin was enlightened and reluctantly agreed to Alice Phil's ridiculous request. In Alice Phil's words, "You're a dead spirit. Why do you care so much?" Creak. Dustless pushed open the door gently. He thought that Rin and Akui Tosaka were already asleep, but the chandelier in the bedroom and living room were still on. Are they asleep? Why are the lights still on? Dustless shook his head when he realized that there was no movement in the bedroom. He didn't want to disturb the mother and daughter. He sat on the sofa and rested for a while. Then he turned on the TV out of boredom. He turned the volume to the lowest and found a few bags of snacks to pass the time. Dustless accepted Alice Phil's suggestion to protect Rin and Akui Tosaka for the time being. He had to stay close to them. Jiantong Yayan would definitely ask for the mother and daughter back. You pervert, you came back without saying a word. Could it be that you wanted to take advantage of the fact that we were asleep to ambush me and my mother? Pervert. Dustless was stunned when he heard the angry voice. He looked over and saw that it was Rin Tosaka. She snatched Dustless's potato chips and stuffed them into her mouth. Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say that. Dustless warned her sternly. He suddenly realized that this girl was too arrogant. Isn't that the truth? None of you heroic spirits are good people. Rin Tosaka crossed her arms and said proudly, you can trample on other people's lives just to satisfy your selfish desires. Even if Yin Fengili didn't kill my father, the rest of you would. It's just a matter of order. You're quite open-minded. That's what you mean. Dustless didn't comment. Even if Yin Fengili didn't kill Toshimi Nagasaka in the end, with Kamiya Kishi's personality, he would still order Saber to kill Toshimi Nagasaka. Like Toshimi Nagasaka said, it was just a matter of who came first. But no matter what, my duty now is to protect you and your mother. You can doubt me or hate me. This is already set in stone. Just accept it. Dustless handed Rin and Osaka a bag of snacks and continued to watch the boring soap opera. You? Rin Enbin frowned. Just as he was about to scold Dustless, Dustless's voice rang out. Instead of scolding me, why don't you console your mother? But she's already asleep, so she can only vent all her anger on you heroic spirits. If it weren't for this disgusting war, father wouldn't have left us. Rin and Osaka's eyes were red, and he looked like he was about to cry. Idiot. Seeing this, Wu Che scratched Rin Enbin's nose and reminded him, a child will always be a child. How can you understand the world of adults? If you were the mother of a child, would you cry in front of the child? This will only hurt the child even more. That's true. Rin and Osaka was stunned when he heard this. He quickly wiped his tears and ran into the room. A brat will always be a brat. His thoughts are indeed too simple. Dustless shook his head as he watched Rin leave. Swish, swish. Time decelerated. Under the black night sky, a pitch-black monster nimbly shuttled back and forth. He wore black armor, and his mask was embellished with a scarlet glow. He looked extremely terrifying and sinister. Ao 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 ao. Especially from his mouth, there were bursts of hissing sounds that made one's heart tremble. His entire body was emitting an unknown black color of disgust. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Grim Reaper. Moreover, he was holding a sharp weapon that emitted cold light in all directions. Bang bang bang. A violent sound rang out. Suddenly, the black shadow smashed through the tempered glass and landed in the brightly lit living room. He then skimmed towards the bedroom with great familiarity. At this moment, an extremely dissatisfied voice rang out. Berserker. That fellow, the Hero King, calling you a mad dog isn't wrong. You sure are a vulgar creature that doesn't know any manners. Even the most ancient king, Gilgamesh, would not ignore my existence when he sees me. Yet you treat me like air. I'm really sorry, Berserker. If you don't leave on your own accord, then I'll force you to leave. You might even lose your life. Dustless, who was lying on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes. They were also scarlet eyes. In his eye sockets, 3 mysterious tomos slowly rotated, emitting an ominous glow. Compared to the ferocious berserker, the current Dustless gave off a more terrifying feeling. The former was more like an enraged lion, while the latter gave off the feeling of a cold executioner. Why is this guy here as well? Personal protection? Damn it. Among all the heroic spirits, this 8th heroic spirit is the most difficult to deal with. His strength is ridiculously strong. In the dark forest at the border of the castle, a figure was gasping for breath and wailing in pain. His face was twitching, and under his skin, it was as if there were countless insects scurrying around aimlessly. It was extremely disgusting. This person was Mamatsuki Yeien. When he found out that Akui Tasaka and Rin Tasaka had been taken to the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he rushed over without stopping. His intention was just as Alice Phil had guessed, to save the mother and son who had been through a lot. However, to his surprise, he never expected Dustless to be the personal protection. Boom boom boom. An explosion suddenly sounded. The invading berserker was kicked out by Dustless the same way he had invaded. Chapter 1704. Seeing Berserker's figure flying out, Jiantong Yian was stunned for a moment before he cursed. Berserker is a useless piece of trash. He's good at causing trouble for me, but when he's fighting with the enemy he can only fight with someone like Archer. Trash. Jiantong Yian complained loudly in disgust as if Berserker was a nobody that was not worth mentioning. The actual result was not like that. Among all the heroic spirits, Berserker's statistics were considered top-notch. The fact that he could fight with Gold Flash was proof of his strength. Now he was being tortured by Dustless because his opponent was too monstrous. Lightspeed kick. A laser beam fell on Berserker's body, and his body immediately flew out uncontrollably. Boom boom boom. On the surface it looked like a light kick, but the real power was terrifying. The heavy armor on Berserker's abdomen collapsed due to the direct attack of the lightspeed kick. Ka ka ka. A large number of pieces of the armor were peeling off. Ka ka ka. The void suddenly cracked, and from the mysterious unknown space, an ancient dark red katana swept out. The blade was red and simple, and just by looking at it, one could feel that it was very hot and fatal, as if he could be burned alive at any time. It was the super soul slasher that could destroy the world, Ryujin Jaka. Berserker, you can still hold on for so long. It's worthy of praise. This is really a miracle. Dustless smacked his lips and nodded with a smile. You can still hold on after taking a light speed kick. Although I don't know how strong your combat power is, I can be sure that your ability to take a beating is definitely second to none. Oh. Woo woo woo. In the dark, Berserker seemed to have heard Dustless's ridicule clearly. Inside his helmet, there was a roar that sounded like a human. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Then he turned into a gust of black wind and pounced straight at Dustless. Boom boom boom. The two immediately engaged in close combat, and bright sparks kept flickering. This is a good chance. Now that the 8th heroic spirit is being held back by Berserker, I can go find Kuei Helen and take advantage of this rare opportunity to rescue Kuei Helen and her daughter. Seeing this, Jiantong Yian was overjoyed. Looking at Berserker, who was fighting Dustless, he sighed in his heart. This heroic spirit, who always liked to attract hatred, had done its job this time. While the two were fighting, Tong Yian dragged his exhausted body and hurriedly slipped to Kuei and Ling's room. It was extremely difficult for him to walk, and he even fell down several times along the way. There was nothing he could do about it. All his energy had been sucked away by the worms wandering in his body. Now he was just a shell that could control oil. Phew. Thank goodness Berserker is here. Otherwise, with the existence of the 8th heroic spirit, I would never be able to reach this door. Ten minutes later, Jiantong Yian finally came to Dustless's room and found Ling and Kuei's room. I'm relieved to be praised by you, but is it really okay for you to ignore me like this? Jiantong Yian was shocked by the sudden voice. He turned his head and saw Wu Qin, who looked lazy. He was sitting on the sofa eating potato chips and drinking Coke. He looked very leisurely and comfortable. Impossible, you should be fighting Berserker. Why are you here now? Staring at Dustless, who was fighting Berserker not far away, Tong Yian glanced at Dustless, who was eating chips. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he was not seeing things. He was shocked to find that there were two Dustless in front of him. Idiot, the one fighting Berserker is just my shadow clone. Dustless glanced at the shocked Tong Yayin and showed a look of disdain. Berserker would have a hard time dealing with my doppelganger, let alone my real body. I purposely suppressed the strength of my doppelganger so that Berserker could stall it. My main purpose was to lure you out. As I expected, you really fell for it. How pathetic. Tong Yayin was furious when he heard Wu Chen's words. He stared at Wu Chen's mocking face. He felt that his dignity and IQ had been trampled on by this abominable guy. A mere heroic spirit dares to trick me? Eat him up. In his anger, Tong Yayin suddenly waved his big hand. His skin suddenly burst open and countless larvae broke out from his skin. There were dozens or even hundreds of larvae that came to bite Wu Chen. The buzzing sound was unbearable. Being stared at by countless man-eating insects, no one could laugh it off. You're overestimating yourself. Dustless snorted and rolled his eyes. His pupils emitted a ferocious aura. At the same time, a strong wave of Ryatsu erupted from his body. Puchi, puchi, puchi. All kinds of disgusting insects wandering in the space collapsed in an instant and turned into blood. The disgusting smell was as unbearable as the smell on Tong Yayin's body. Stupid thing, Tong Yayin. Have your intelligence been eaten by insects? You want to use such a rubbish trick to deal with a heroic spirit? Do you think I'm a small character like Tashimi Nagasaka? Chapter 1705. Hearing Dustless's mocking words, Tong Yayin was enraged. After all, the so-called heroic spirits were just tools used by the masters. No matter how strong they were still just tools. Just like Lancer and Kenneth in the original novel. Lancer's combat power was amazing and he even injured Saber. However, as the master, Kenneth ordered Lancer to commit suicide. Lancer couldn't escape his tragic fate and was killed by his own gun in the end. Damn you, you're just a heroic spirit. How dare you be so arrogant when you're already dead? Suddenly, Tong Yayin realized that Akui and Rin were still in the castle. Tong Yayin, who was in despair, suddenly regained his strength. The mother and daughter were his spiritual sustenance. Therefore, Tong Yayin's little universe exploded again. Crack, crack, crack. Tong Yayin's skin exploded again, and the insects that were hidden deep inside his body flew out again. These insects were abnormally fat. It was obvious that Tong Yayin's body was a feast for them. Disgusting things. Dustless's face turned even colder. He quickly formed a hand seal and a huge fireball flew out. Fire release, great fireball technique. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the insects that were flying towards Tong Yayin turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. Puchi. Tong Yayin was forced to use his strength again and again. In the end, he fell against the wall. His throat rolled a few times and then he spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. There were also a few insects coming out of his mouth. How rude of you to dirty someone's room with such disgusting things. Especially when there are two ladies living here. Didn't your father, Tong Yayin, teach you manners? Leaning on the sofa, Dustless lazily stared at Tong Yayin. He also threw the potato chips aside. Even though the tempered glass was broken and the whole room was very cool, the disgusting smell still lingered in the room. Dustless also lost his appetite. Do you really want Akui and Rin to live in peace forever? Dustless glanced at Tong Yayin and stared at his crazy face. His voice then sank. Or is it just your rationality that's causing trouble? Do you simply want to possess the mother and daughter? Bullshit. Hearing this, Tong Yayin flew into a rage and roared, I regard Ling and Kuei as my family. How could I do such a thing? Don't slander me. I participated in this Holy Grail war because I don't want them to continue following that scumbag Tashimi. Is that so? Then I'll take back what I said earlier. By the way, I'd like to apologize. In other words, your only wish is for Kuei and Ling to live on without any worries, right? Dustless asked with a smile. He looked harmless, but deep in his eyes, there was a scheming light. Of course. For this goal, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I won't hesitate. Tong Yayin, who was physically exhausted, finally knelt on the ground. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with determination. Wow, it's rare to see such a great person like you. I can't help but admire you. Dustless continued to smile, and then he instigated, however, even if I give the mother and daughter to you, what kind of protection can you give them? After you die, where can they go? Do you still need to say that? Of course, it's the Tong family. The two of them are going to live there for the rest of their lives, living a carefree and stable life like Sakura. Jiantong Yan answered without hesitation. Then here comes the problem. I don't need to say it. You know what kind of person Jiantong Yan is? For the Holy Grail, that guy is crazy. An Ling is a genius with an extremely high magical talent. Do you think Jiantong Yan will overturn her? Jiantong Yan, you are pushing the mother and daughter into the fire pit. Dustless's voice seemed to contain magic, making Jiantong Yan roll his eyes and fall silent. What do you want to say? Staring at Dustless, Jiantong Yan keenly realized that Dustless's words had other meanings. But it was undeniable that what he said made sense. With Jiantong Yan's personality, he would never let Ling and Kuei go. It was equivalent to pushing the mother and daughter into a merciless sea of fire. I can give the mother and daughter to you, but the premise is, you have to kill your biological father, Jiantong Yan. That guy won't let Ling and Kuei go easily. Unless you kill that old man, I can only give you Kuei and Ling's protection. Dustless said sincerely. Kill him? Jiantong Yan was touched when he heard that. In his mind, a terrible old man at the end of his life appeared. His hoarse laughter lingered in his heart for a long time, forming a shadow pattern that was difficult to get rid of. Yes, after you die, that old man won't die. After this Holy Grail, there will be the next Holy Grail war. Maybe that old man will use some evil means. Enough, I agree to your conditions. A raging light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Jiantong Yan finally gritted his teeth and agreed to Dustless's conditions. At the same time he roared, I will go back and kill that old man Jiantong Yan now. I hope you will abide by the agreement when the time comes. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiantong Yan dragged his tired body and left. Before he left, he did not forget to glance at the room where Ling and Kuei were sleeping soundly. A layer of transparent enchantment was clearly visible. Even though it was as thin as a cicada's wing, even though it was close at hand, it was still at the end of the world for Jiantong Yan. No wonder you were used. You are so naive. Even if you kill that old man, I won't give the mother and daughter to you. Jiantong Yan, just like you said before, after all, I am just a sandvart. The decision is in Alice Phil's hands. With a devilish smile, Dustless finally closed his eyes. Chapter 1706. Jiantong Family. Jiantong Yan returned to his bedroom in a daze. He pushed the door open and planned to lie down on the bed to rest for a while. Unexpectedly, a mysterious figure hit him with a stick. Bang! A heavy stick hit him and Jiantong Yan was instantly smashed to the ground. A huge red mark appeared on his forehead where he was hit. Jiantong Yan turned his head and looked at him fiercely. Jiantong Xinyan, be careful. Be careful. I will kill you. Trash like you? Yan, since when did you like to boast so shamelessly? After being a hero spirit for a while, you still have confidence. Jiantong Xinyan walked out of the darkness with a walking stick. His eyes were shining like a ghost. It was creepy. His evil and bright eyes looked like a smart and cunning demon. Jiantong Xinyan, let Sakura go immediately. Changing the topic, Tong Yan used all of his strength to turn around and announce in an extremely cold tone, you better know your place before I make a decision. Decision? What do you want to decide? Yan, I don't understand where your confidence comes from. Just based on your current half-dead state? You better know your place and help me get the Holy Grail. In that case, I can let Sakura go. If you fail, I can only apologize. Jiantong Xinyan sat on the sofa calmly and looked at Jiantong Yan, who was sweating profusely. He sneered and said, it is impossible for you to get the Holy Grail in your current state. In this case, Sakura can't give up. Old man, you still haven't given up on Sakura? Jiantong Yan glared at him. His face was cold. Are you going to break the agreement? Agreement? Ridiculous. If you really remember the agreement, you should remember to help me get the Holy Grail. If you fail, the agreement will be invalid. Jiantong Xinyan turned his face shamelessly. You bastard, how dare you? Jiantong Yan clenched his fists when he heard that. The veins on his forehead bulged. The insects that had disappeared were running around in his skin again. Do you want to be rough with me? With your level? Before we fight, I have to warn you that if you use your heroic spirit rashly, you'll definitely die. Jiantong Xinyan kindly reminded him that he had not obtained the Holy Grail yet. Naturally, he did not want Jiantong Yan to die just like that. I'll drag you down with me, Berserker. But Tong Yan didn't care. He shouted, and a black skeleton knight appeared in front of him. He said coldly, that guy is right. As long as I get rid of you, everything will be over. That guy. Tong Xinyan was stunned when he heard this. He was secretly annoyed. A rare flame swept through his rotten heart. Someone actually taught his son to kill his father. It was extremely ironic. Ow 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 ow. Berserker let out his signature low growl and rushed to Zhang Yin Jiantong without hesitation. The big sword in his right hand was the first to cut a cold light into the void. Puchi. Tong Zhangyin's body was cut open by Berserker mercilessly. However, there was no blood flowing out as expected. After the old man was cut, his body turned into a large number of flying insects and scattered in all directions. Humph, old man, you run fast. Tong Yayin snorted angrily. He dragged his exhausted body and ran around like a headless fly, looking for traces of Xiaoying. Damn it, which bastard dares to trick my son to kill me? If I find out, I'll definitely let him know the pain of being bitten by thousands of insects. In the gloomy underground warehouse, there were insects everywhere. There were so many of them that they almost covered the entire ground. TSK, old man, do you hate me that much? A sloppy voice suddenly sounded. Tong Zhangyan was shocked. He suddenly turned his head, and an unexpected figure was fixed in his eyes. The short black hair was messy, but there was a trace of elegance in it. Those dark eyes were eternal and unforgettable. Especially the smile on the corner of his mouth, it made Tong Zhangyan even more furious. It was as if he was looking at a clown. It made his face gloomy. The eighth heroic spirit? Are you the one who instigated Yayan to kill me? Glaring at Dustless, Tong Zhangyan said hoarsely, that idiot was deceived by an outsider. His IQ is even lower than Xiao Ying's. Useless trash. Ayaya, if Yayan finds out that you're scolding your son like this, he'll be very sad. However, there's one thing I agree with. He can't even kill a terminally ill old man. That guy is really not suitable to be a master. He's indeed useless. Dustless agreed with Tong Zhangyan's opinion. So you're going to personally lead the army to kill me? Tong Zhangyan's eyes were cold. He said, it's not that easy to kill me. After all, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before the old man finished speaking, Dustless turned into a ray of light and appeared in front of him. Then the scorching heaven sword of clouds slashed down. Puchi. The golden light penetrated Tong Zhangyan's body. From his forehead to his lower body, he was cut open by Dustless. His eyes were staring straight at the indifferent face of Dustless. It seemed that he was unwilling to die. Old man, you can rest in peace. Glancing faintly at Tong Zhangyan, this guy's body immediately burned automatically. Amaterasu. The black fire engulfed Tong Zhangyan's whole body and annihilated him in an instant. Finally, all the insects in the warehouse were burned by Dustless. I still have to take Xiaoying away. Shaking his head in distress, his observation haki spread out, and Dustless began to look for Sakura's traces. This is what Kue and Osaka begged. Anyway, I'm bored, so I might as well help her. Dustless suddenly felt Tong Zhangyan's house because he suddenly thought of a big problem. He didn't have time to ask before letting Tong Zhangyan leave. Chapter 1707. In the dark courtyard, the path led to a secluded place. Under the moonlight, the lights were blurry. Sakura. Seeing the filthy light, Jiantong Yayan was overjoyed. He dragged his body and rushed over. He could see Sakura's residence in the Jiantong family. Take Sakura away. Even if I die, I can rest in peace. A satisfied smile appeared on his pale face. To Jiantong Yayan, the most important people in his life were Xiaoying, Kue Tasaka, and Rin Tasaka. Tiske, what a touching relationship, Yayan. A mocking tone came from the sky. When he was about to reach Sakura's room, a black shadow blocked his way. It was the last person Jiantong Yayan wanted to see in his life. He was second only to Toshiomi Inaka. What are you doing in our house, you despicable fellow? You are not welcome here. Jiantong Yayan's face was full of bad luck. His tone was full of disgust and fear. Not welcome? That's not up to you. I came here to ask you something. I also agreed to Sakura's request to take her away. Looking at Jiantong Yayan's disgusted expression, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He did not care. In this world there were many people who hated him and did not like him. But in the end there was only one ending, death. Did Sakura agree? Jiantong Yayan did not refute. He knew that Sakura had always been in Sakura's heart. However, Toshiomi Inaka was too cold. Sakura had no right to speak. Moreover, the magician family was only allowed to have one legal heir. In the end, Sakura was given to the Jiantong family. What do you think I am planning? Also, I just killed your cheap father, Jiantong Yayan. That old man raised a bunch of worms. It's disgusting. The fat worms appeared in his mind. Dustless looked disgusted. Mind your own business. Even if you don't intervene, I will kill that damn old man. Jiantong Yan did not thank Dustless. Instead, he scolded Dustless. You won't be able to last long in this state. Before that, I have a question that I want you to answer. After organizing his thoughts, Dustless's mind became active. When he was in the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he had neglected this important issue. How did you know that Rin Tasaka and Kue Tasaka are with the Ahrensburg family? Although the Tong family is very well informed, and I don't think you've been to the Einsbalen family, when you went to the castle just now, you were so familiar with it that you didn't even waste any time. You immediately confirmed that the mother and daughter were in my room. Humph, of course that's what Wei Gong Qixi told me. Sitting on the ground tiredly, Jiantong Yan explained, Wei Gong Qixi, that despicable fellow, hopes to use Kue and Ling as the price in exchange for our cooperation to eliminate Yan Feng Qili and his archer. No wonder you're so familiar with that castle. Dustless suddenly understood. No matter how despicable Wei Gong Qixi was, he didn't care. A person who was twisted by so-called justice would do anything crazy. Is that so? Then I have something important to tell you. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into a treacherous arc as he said, Wei Gong Qixi, that fellow. Previously he still hoped to kill Kue He Ling. Letting him live is definitely a big problem. Why don't you go and kill that fellow? Did I hear wrongly? You want me to kill Wei Gong Qixi? Her eyes were fixed on Dustless. Jiantong Yan felt that her brain wasn't enough. This guy in front of her wanted her to kill Wei Gong Qixi. Did he not know what this meant? If things went wrong, Wei Gong Qixi's heroic spirit, saber, would disappear. Are you willing to do that? That fellow is a huge threat to Ling and Kue if he's alive. Dustless increased his tone and said, I don't mind telling you directly. That fellow is actually a pervert and a sex fiend. Is enough. I promise you that I'll kill that fellow Wei Gong Qixi. She glanced at Xiao Ying's room with a reluctant expression. But in the end she gritted her teeth and left. Idiot, you think you can kill Wei Gong Qixi with just you? That fellow has saber's protection. Furthermore, Wei Gong Qixi is an extremely cunning and sinister person. Dustless shook his head and turned to Xiao Ying's room. Creak. The door was gently pushed open by Dustless. Unexpectedly, before Dustless could take the initiative to summon her, a tender and soft fist smashed towards Dustless's face. Bang. Dustless casually raised his hand to block the fist. He frowned slightly. The person who attacked him was Jiantong Yan. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. She was like a walking corpse without any vitality. Grandpa said that other than him, anyone who dares to approach me is a bad person. Xiao Ying muttered vaguely. There was no emotion in her voice. She looked like a zombie. Has she been brainwashed? Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this, and then he remembered the character of Jiantong Yan. He couldn't help but say strangely, that old man wants Xiao Ying to kill Jiantong Yan? As expected, he's an old monster. Bang. Dustless knocked Xiao Ying unconscious with a karate chop. He tried to use the Tensigan to modify Xiao Ying's memory and erase the tragic memory of the Jiantong family from the depths of her soul. I hope that Jiantong Yan can cut off Wei Gong Qixi's hand. It's best to make him disabled so that he won't be scheming all day long. Dustless left the Jiantong family with Xiao Ying in his arms and quickly rushed to the castle of the Ahrensburg family. He had a feeling that Jiantong Yan will definitely teach Wei Gong Qixi a lesson. Chapter 1708. In the forest near the castle of the Ahrensburg family. You are too reckless. That Dustless is very powerful. I am sure that even Saber would not be able to defeat him, let alone your berserker. In the dark forest, a few figures could be vaguely seen. Jiantong Yan, let's come up with another plan. I will help you sneak Katsuki Tasaka and Rin Tasaka away. As a price, you have to help me kill Yan Feng and Qili. Wei Gong Qixi looked at the white-haired Jiantong Yan and suddenly felt that something was wrong with him. This guy's eyes. Something is wrong. Looking at Jiantong Yan and Berserker who was beside him, Wei Gong Qixi was not worried. He could summon Saber here instantly with a command spell. No, I have changed my plan. He sinisterly approached Wei Gong Qixi. Tong Yan's calm eyes instantly turned scarlet. His killing intent was completely revealed and filled with a frightening killing intent. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Suddenly Jiantong Yan attacked relentlessly. His body turned into a gust of wind and pounced on Wei Gong Qixi who was still in a daze. Gulp. He grabbed Wei Gongqi's vital part mercilessly. What are you trying to do? Realizing that his vital part as a man was being grabbed, Wei Gongqi shivered and looked at Jiantong Yan, who was in a frenzy. You bastard pervert, I will take you down with me even if I die. Jiantong Yan's veins were bulging on his right hand as he increased his strength. This guy is so evil. He wants Wei Gongqi but can't be a man? Dustless was speechless. He thought that Jiantong Yan would just cripple Wei Gongqi. He did not expect Jiantong Yan to be so ruthless. He wanted to crush Wei Gongqi's balls. No, I have to help Jiantong Yan once. I like this kind of method. Dustless laughed. He knew that Jiantong Yan had mastered some special magic. He might be able to turn back time. If that was the case, Jiantong Yan's sneak attack would have been wasted. If that's the case, then I'll... Dustless focused on Wei Gongqi's body, purposely avoiding the fatal wound. He mercilessly threw out a pitch-black dagger towards Wei Gongqi's body. Swish, swish. The tip of the pitch-black dagger was shining with a cold light. This is bad. That bastard Jiantong Yan actually has an accomplice. Hearing the sharp sound behind him, Wei Gongqi turned his head and saw a dagger emitting a cold light. Immediately his heart turned cold. Just as he was about to cast a spell to dodge, it was already too late. The merciless cold light pierced through Wei Gongqi's body, causing blood to flow out. Although he wanted to kill this bastard, Dustless had to admit that if he lost Wei Gongqi's saber would immediately collapse and disappear. Puchi. The dagger pierced through his body, leaving a bloody hole. However, because Dustless had purposely avoided the vital parts, Wei Gongqi's injuries weren't too serious. Puchi. At the same time, seeing this rare opportunity, Jiantong Yan also launched a fatal attack. He clenched his fist and crushed Wei Gongqi's balls. From now on, there was one less man in the world and one more eunuch. Gongqi was in so much pain that his head was covered in sweat. His crotch was covered in fresh blood. He fell to the ground and howled in pain. His scarlet eyes stared at Jiantong Yan, wishing that he could turn him into a human stick. This ridiculous bastard. First he scolded him for being a perverted pervert. Now he crippled him. Wei Gongqi's heart was deeply traumatized. I will definitely kill you. Definitely. Wei Gongqi roared in his heart. He swore that he had never wanted to kill someone as much as he did now. It was all because of this bastard in front of him that he could no longer be a man. Wei Gongqi wanted to cry but no tears came out. This was a great humiliation to him. It was even more humiliating than what he had accumulated in his life. Especially when he was inexplicably crippled by Jiantong Yan. Wei Gongqi felt very wronged by being called a perverted pervert. He didn't do anything worse than a beast, but he had become such a scapegoat. He even had the thought of dying. Well done. Dustless was full of smiles. He had never realized that Jiantong Yan was so cute. Ping ping ping. A series of messy footsteps suddenly sounded. Dustless raised his head and saw an untimely figure. Her panicked face stared at the blood on Wei Gongqi's crotch in disbelief. She then looked at Jiantong Yan, who had a crazed expression and suddenly understood something. Jiuwomi? This fellow really likes to meddle in other people's business. Dustless frowned inwardly. He was rather dissatisfied with her appearance. He then lowered his head and pondered for a moment. In the end he rushed out from the darkness. Not only that, Saber also rushed over. Alice and Phil also did the same. Wei Gongqi's heart-wrenching scream just now was too heart-wrenching. What a pity. I let go of a chance to torture Wei Gongqi. Sigh. Dustless smacked his lips and sighed in pity. Looking at Saber's humiliated appearance, he knew that she would not let Jiantong Yan off so easily. After all, although Wei Gongqi was a rotten person, he was still Saber's master. If Jiantong Yan was allowed to leave, Saber's dignity would also be damaged. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.